After 6 years, the millionaire cast his gaze upon the 5-year-old boy standing beside his ex-wife, and a wave of shock washed over him. The sleek black Range Rover navigated the serpentine road toward Millbrook, Connecticut, its tinted windows glinting in the warm glow of the late afternoon sun. Anthony Maxwell tightened his grip on the steering wheel, adjusting his sunglasses with a deliberate motion. 15 years crafting a legacy in Chicago. At the age of 35, he found himself compelled to revisit the city he had vowed never to enter again. The GPS declared he was merely 5 miles from his destination. Yet with each meter he covered, memories he had meticulously tucked away in the recesses of his mind resurfaced, pulling at him like a tide. The ancient trees that flanked the road appeared unchanged since his youth, standing as quiet guardians, silently observing his hesitant return. The meeting with the Millbrook Technologies Board has been scheduled for tomorrow at 9 a.m., Mr. Maxwell. Harrison. The voice of his assistant resonated through the car's Bluetooth system. Thanks, Rachel. Prepare the acquisition documents and ensure the lawyers are present. He responded with a measured tone, his voice reflecting the professionalism that had defined him in recent years. The reality was that the purchase of Millbrook Technologies served merely as a pretext. The true motive behind his return was rooted in the last wishes of his grandmother, Eleanor Maxwell, who passed away a month prior. In her final testament, she had decreed that Anthony must stay in the city for a minimum of 3 months to claim his inheritance, a significant fortune even by her present measures. The city center emerged on the horizon, almost as if it had remained untouched by time. The familiar central square, the white church standing tall with its grand steeple, the old shops boasting their well-maintained facades. Time seemed to freeze, holding on to every memory he wished to leave behind. Anthony pulled up in front of the Millbrook Grand Hotel, the sole place in town that could truly be deemed opulent. Just as he was about to exit the car, his cell phone buzzed with a vibration. A message had arrived from Victoria, his fiancée. Sweetheart, remember our engagement dinner coming up next month. The finalization of the guest list is necessary. He set the phone aside, leaving it unanswered. Victoria embodied all that he had accomplished in Chicago. Polish reputation, professional relationships, an ideal union in theory, yet one that had recently led him to reconsider his decisions. The hotel manager welcomed him with an air of exaggerated respect, clearly aware of the identity of his new guest. Anthony arrived at the presidential suite, where his suitcases awaited his presence. From the window, he enjoyed an exclusive perspective of the city he once cherished as home. He chose to stroll around to absorb the atmosphere of the surroundings. Dressed in a flawless Italian suit that contrasted sharply with the laid-back vibe of the city, he meandered along the main street. A handful of recognizable figures observed him with interest, yet none dared to step forward. His tight-lipped demeanor deterred any effort to bridge the distance. As he walked by the old Miller's ice cream parlor, time seemed to freeze around him. Through the window, he glimpsed Jennifer Lawrence, radiant and striking, reminiscent of his most poignant recollections. Her brown hair cascaded in gentle waves over her shoulders, and her smile, that smile that had lingered in his thoughts during countless solitary nights, remained unchanged. Yet that wasn't the reason his heart raced with excitement. Beside her, grasping her hand, stood a young boy, perhaps 5 years old. A boy possessing the same vibrant green eyes and resolute chin that Anthony encountered each morning in his reflection. Time appeared to stand still. Jennifer lifted her gaze and caught sight of him. The smile vanished from her lips, giving way to a look of disbelief and something deeper, terror. The young lad, unaware of the mounting unease, pulled at his mother's hand, eagerly gesturing towards the array of ice cream flavors. Anthony sensed his legs begin to falter. In a fleeting moment, the barriers he had meticulously constructed throughout the years, the aloofness he had so carefully nurtured, and the grip he had maintained over his emotions all disintegrated. Questions surged through his mind. What had held her back from speaking up? How could she conceal something so significant? In a moment of impulse, she stepped forward, approaching the entrance of the ice cream parlor. With swift determination, Jennifer scooped the boy into her embrace and made her way toward the rear of the store. As Anthony stepped inside, they had already slipped away through the staff door. A youthful staff member came forward, beaming. "How may I assist you, sir?" Anthony gazed at the door that Jennifer had rushed through, his mind swirling with a tempest of emotions long kept at bay. "No," he replied instinctively. "It's not possible." He exited the ice cream parlor as though in a daze, his thoughts looping endlessly around the image of the boy. 6 years after departing from Millbrook, he realized that he hadn't merely escaped a shattered heart. He had forsaken a child he was unaware of. That night, isolated in his opulent suite, Anthony Maxwell, the merciless CEO who had forged an empire from nothing, wept for the first time in years. The 3 months ahead in Millbrook had transformed into something entirely significant, and he realized that his life was poised for irrevocable change. The night stretched endlessly for Anthony. Perched on the balcony of his suite, a glass of whiskey untouched before him, he finally permitted himself to dive into the memories he had long fought to keep at bay. Summer of 2018. The atmosphere was rich with the fragrance of blossoming magnolias as he encountered Jennifer at the municipal library, where she dedicated her skills to restoring ancient texts. He could still envision her vividly. At the pinnacle of the staircase, she poised herself, stretching toward a neglected tome, her hair casually gathered in a relaxed bun. "Are you in need of assistance?" he inquired, and as she pivoted, beaming, a transformation stirred within him for all time. The vibration of his cell phone jolted him back to the here and now. Once more it was Victoria. "Anthony, my dear, that's 2 messages that have gone unanswered. Is everything okay?" He pushed the phone aside, overwhelmed by the weight of his engagement in that instant. How could he convey to Victoria that he had just discovered he was a father? How can one explain that the entire future they envisioned together might unravel? The dawn broke, yet he had not found rest in slumber. At 8:45, he was flawlessly attired for the meeting at Millbrook Technologies, yet his thoughts drifted far from the impending corporate takeover. In the bustling hotel lobby, Mr. Maxwell found himself intercepted by his assistant. "I have the updated documents ready and—" He interrupted sharply, saying to cancel the meeting. "However, sir, the shareholders, please move it to next week." His voice allowed for no disagreement. Without pausing for a response, Anthony sped towards his grandmother's house, now transformed into her estate. The Victorian mansion stood proudly, its grandeur still evident despite a hint of neglect. In the back garden, he encountered Rose, the devoted housekeeper who had been a steadfast presence for his family through the years. "I knew you'd return," the lady remarked, her weathered hands tending to the roses that her grandmother cherished dearly. "Eleanor often remarked that you would eventually return to where you belong." "Rose," he paused. "Could you share some information about Jennifer Lawrence?" The housekeeper's demeanor shifted ever so slightly. "Ah, so you're familiar with young Christopher." The name struck Anthony with the force of a blow. Christopher. He had given his son a name. Why was I left in the dark? Rose set aside her gardening tools, gazing at him with a blend of empathy and disapproval. "Your grandmother made an effort, Anthony. Every one of those calls you left unanswered. She had a message for you." The words crashed over him, each one a relentless surge of guilt. How often had he brushed aside Eleanor's efforts to reach out, firmly believing they were merely ploys to lure him back to the city he despised. "In the initial months, Jennifer made an effort to locate you," Rose went on. "However, you altered all your connections. You vanished entirely." The recollection of those days overwhelmed him once more. The intense confrontation, the biting remarks traded, his hasty exit to Chicago. He severed all connections with Jennifer, blocking her number, changing his email address, and eliminating any potential links. "She was expecting when I departed," he murmured mostly to himself rather than to Rose. "And she was still unaware," the housekeeper added. It was 2 weeks later when she discovered the truth. Eleanor provided support during her entire pregnancy journey. She also embraced the role of grandmother to Christopher. Anthony sank onto the garden bench, his legs buckling under the burden of the revelations. His grandmother, with her profound wisdom, had cared for his son while he was preoccupied with constructing empires. A sound from the fence drew his focus. Christopher stood there, his eyes filled with curiosity as he gazed through the wooden slats. For a fleeting instant, their eyes locked, both adorned in the striking green gown, both brimming with curiosity. "Chris!" Jennifer's voice rang out, filled with alarm, and in an instant, the boy vanished. With a sudden burst of energy, Anthony rose to his feet, yet Rose grasped his arm firmly. "Allow her some time, my boy. One cannot simply intrude upon their existence after a span of 6 years." "But he's my son," she insisted, her voice trembling with emotion. "For 5 years, he belonged solely to her. Jennifer nurtured him on her own, crafted a life, shielding that boy from any hurt his absence could bring. You must demonstrate that you are worthy of a role in their lives." The impact of that truth struck him with undeniable intensity. Once more, his phone buzzed with a vibration. Victoria, likely concerned about his extended quietness. Yet, how could he focus on a wedding in Chicago when his son was so close, just a few houses away, growing up without any knowledge of his existence? "What course of action should I take, Rose?" The housekeeper offered a gentle smile, redirecting her focus to the roses. "Begin by making the correct choice after a long 6-year wait. Remain. Confront what has come before. And most importantly, be ready to stand up for your right to be that boy's father." Anthony found himself in the very spot Christopher had occupied just moments ago, burdened by the gravity of each misstep he had taken. His meticulously crafted existence in Chicago now resembled a precarious tower of cards on the verge of toppling over. And unexpectedly, this possibility didn't intimidate him as much as it perhaps ought to have. After 6 long years, Anthony Maxwell finally understood precisely where he belonged. The following morning arrived, infused with a fresh sense of resolve. Before the sun peeked over the horizon, Anthony rose from his slumber. Clad in running attire, a choice he hadn't made in years, he resolved to stroll through the streets of Millbrook. He required some contemplation, and physical activity had consistently aided him in sharpening his thoughts. He found himself wandering down Maple Street, drawn by an unseen force to Jennifer's home. The quaint, 2-story Victorian home, adorned in a gentle hue of blue, stood still in the quiet of that hour. A bright red children's bicycle rested on the front lawn, accompanied by a few scattered toys, clear evidence of Christopher's presence. Seeking something, Mr. Maxwell, the resonant voice caught him off guard. Daniel Cooper, the ex-police chief and father of Jennifer, stood on his porch, cradling a steaming cup of coffee in his hands. His eyes, which used to radiate warmth, now held a chilling precision. "Daniel, I am Chief Cooper," as the older man interjected. "You forfeited that privilege ages ago," Anthony murmured. During his time with Jennifer, Daniel had taken on a paternal role in his life. The bitterness in his voice was unmistakable. "I must have a conversation with her." "No, you don't," Daniel said as he descended the porch steps. "You should return to your life in Chicago and allow my daughter and grandson to be." "He's my son as well," Daniel chuckled without any real amusement. "Child, a father stands by his family, Maxwell. A father doesn't vanish for 6 years without leaving a mark." "I had no idea," Anthony exclaimed, his voice reverberating through the quiet street. "How am I supposed to know if no one has informed me?" "Lower your voice," Daniel whispered, casting a concerned look toward Jennifer's house. "Join me on this journey." They strolled quietly to the quaint cafe on the corner, freshly opened and inviting. The aroma of warm bread and rich coffee wafted through the atmosphere. "Are you aware of the reason Jennifer could never share that with you?" Once they settled into a distant table, Daniel started to speak. "That final night, your words shattered her completely." Anthony furrowed his brow, searching his mind for the elusive memory. "I have no desire for children. It's something I've always felt. This quaint little town, this serene existence, it all feels stifling to me. I require additional content. I am worthy of greater things." Daniel recited it exactly as it was said. That was your exclamation just before you departed. The memory struck Anthony with the force of a slap. The confrontation had been fierce, stemming from his exasperation over Jennifer's unwillingness to relocate to Chicago alongside him. He muttered, more to himself than to Daniel, filled with anger. Unbeknownst to her, she was carrying a child. Upon discovering the truth 2 weeks later, what words could she possibly use to convey it to you? Your sentiments regarding children and life in a small town have been expressed quite distinctly. Anthony sensed his guilt growing heavier with each passing moment. Yet she might have made an effort. She made an effort. Daniel cut him off. She dialed repeatedly. Emails have been sent. Correspondence. All things returned. You built up so many barriers that you became impossible to reach. The stillness that ensued was overwhelming. From his perch by the cafe window, Anthony observed as the city gradually stirred to life. Christopher, he started with a hint of uncertainty. How is he as a person? A subtle warmth flickered in Daniel's eyes. Radiant, inquisitive. He possesses a sharp intellect and the tender spirit of his mother. He has a deep affection for literature, much like Jennifer. Yet he also possesses a keen interest in the world of business. Last week, he established a lemonade stand and devised a loyalty program for his patrons. Anthony felt a surge of pride that brought a smile to his face. Is that so? Is he inquiring about me? Jennifer mentioned that your father was a businessman who journeyed across the globe. She wished to ensure he never felt alone. She chose to weave a narrative that would shield him from suffering. I must rectify this, Anthony asserted, his tone resolute. I want to be involved in his life. What is the situation with his fiancée in Chicago? Daniel inquired, stunning Anthony. Indeed, information spreads quickly in Millbrook. What role does she play in those plans? Just as he was about to respond, his phone buzzed with a notification. Once more, it was Victoria. Anthony, I've secured a flight to Millbrook. I will be arriving tomorrow. It's essential that we come together to find a solution to this situation. A wave of anxiety gripped his heart. Two realms that were never meant to intersect were on the brink of a fateful encounter. There's quite a bit for you to figure out, Maxwell, Daniel remarked, rising to his feet. However, I must share one insight. If you cause harm to Jennifer or Christopher once more, there will be no corner of this world where you can escape my reach. Anthony lingered in the cafe, long after Daniel's departure, observing as the city awakened around him. From his vantage point at the window, he observed Jennifer and Christopher making their way to school. The young lad leaped joyfully, grasping his mother's hand, sharing words that brought a smile to her face. Her heart tightened. In under a day, Victoria would arrive, carrying with her the intricate web of her life in Chicago. Yet, gazing at his son, Anthony understood that certain decisions had been set in motion, even if he lacked the bravery to acknowledge it. He reached for his phone and, after several days of silence, finally responded to Victoria's message. Stay away. I have something important to share with you, and I want to do it face-to-face when I return. The response came without delay. What do you mean by that? What's happening? Anthony observed as Jennifer and Christopher rounded the corner before he responded. The truth is, Millbrook's Municipal Library, characterized by its red brick walls and arched windows, stood unchanged, just as Anthony recalled it. After 3 days of quietly watching Jennifer and Christopher's routine, he found that on Wednesdays, she continued to manage the children's reading program, tucked away among the bookshelves. Anthony observed as Jennifer took charge of the session. Her gentle voice filled the room as she shared the story of the little prince with a circle of children nestled on vibrant cushions. Christopher was one of them, his green eyes glimmering with intrigue as each page was turned. What is the key element of the book? Jennifer inquired of the group. What lies beyond the gaze of the eye? Christopher responded without delay, causing Anthony's heart to race. It is through the heart that clarity emerges. With a proud smile, Jennifer playfully ruffled her son's hair. Precisely, my dear. Once the session concluded, as the other children departed with their parents, Christopher stayed behind, perusing through additional books. With a deep breath, Anthony mustered all his courage and made his way to the children's section. "That's an excellent book," he remarked, gesturing toward the volume Christopher was holding. A tale featuring magnificent dinosaurs. The young lad gazed upwards, a spark of curiosity illuminating his expression. "Are you fond of dinosaurs?" He recalled his own youthful passion, a rush of excitement coursing through him as he spoke. "I loved them when I was your age," Anthony replied, his heart pounding wildly. "The Tyrannosaurus Rex has always captured my imagination." "Mine as well," Christopher exclaimed with enthusiasm. "However, my mom believes the Triceratops was more impressive since it was a plant eater and posed no threat to anyone." At that moment, Jennifer emerged, her eyes growing wide at the sight of Anthony. "Chris, it's time to leave," she urged with a hint of urgency. "But Mom, I was discussing dinosaurs with Christopher just now." Her voice brooked no dissent. The boy rose with a hint of hesitation, placing the book back on the shelf. "Farewell, Mr. Dinosaur," he murmured, giving a timid wave before dashing off to his mother. Jennifer bided her time, observing Christopher as he tended to his things, before making her way over to Anthony. Her voice was a seething whisper. "What do you believe you are up to?" "It's time for a conversation, Jennifer." "Absolutely not. Your claim to that was forfeited long ago." "Please," he implored, lowering his defenses for the first time. "Just 5 minutes, that's all I request." There was something about his vulnerability that seemed to resonate with Jennifer, prompting her to nod after a brief moment of contemplation. "Tomorrow at noon, Chris will be at school, but you can find him at Café Mason." The following morning, Anthony showed up at the cafe 30 minutes ahead of schedule. He requested a black coffee and went over in his mind all the points he needed to express. Victoria had inundated his inbox with anxious messages, yet he remained at a loss for the perfect words to convey the circumstances. Jennifer made her entrance punctually, adorned in a modest floral dress and clutching a folder filled with important documents. She remained quiet, her gaze deliberately averted from his. "I have something you must see," she declared, as she opened the folder and slid a few papers across the table. Christopher's official document of birth. "DNA tests are not essential. Simply observe it." "Then, I do not." "Please, don't refer to me that way," she interrupted. "I simply wish to clarify things. I have no interest in your finances. It's unnecessary for me. I have created a fulfilling life for Chris, and he is content." Anthony scrutinized the documents, his gaze resting on his son's complete name. Christopher Daniel Lawrence. His last name was missing. "Why didn't you tell me?" he finally asked, his voice revealing the hurt within. Jennifer let out a dry laugh. "You expressed a desire for something beyond a simple life in Millbrook, stating that children weren't part of your plans, and then you vanished, cutting off all communication. What options do I have?" Her voice wavered, and Anthony noticed tears beginning to gather in her eyes. Apologies escaped his lips, a depth of feeling beyond words. "Apologizing won't alter what has already happened," Jennifer said, steadying herself once more. "What is it that you seek now, Anthony?" "I wish to understand my son better. I desire to be included in his life." "What's going on with your fiancé in Chicago? What is the name of your company? Is there an ideal existence waiting for you beyond this place?" Anthony paused, uncertainty flickering in his mind. "Last night, I ended my relationship with Victoria. During the call, I realized it may not have been the ideal approach, yet." Jennifer gazed at him, her eyes wide with astonishment. "Excuse me? I've come to understand that my priorities have shifted," he continued. "What about the company? I have the ability to operate it from any location. I've begun my search for homes in Millbrook. One cannot simply." "I can and I will," he interrupted, his voice resolute. 5 years of my son's life have slipped away from me. I refuse to let another day slip away." The ensuing silence was palpable. Jennifer fidgeted with her napkin, her mind racing as she absorbed the information. She finally revealed that he inquired about you yesterday, referring to the Lord of the Dinosaurs. He remarked that your eyes resembled his own. Anthony experienced a tightness in his chest. Could you repeat that? Jennifer sighed, noting that sometimes people share similar eyes, but she questioned how much longer she could maintain that observation. He possesses a keen intellect and a sharp eye for detail. Then allow me to be a part of his life, Anthony implored. We can take our time, moving at a rhythm that suits you, but I kindly ask for an opportunity. Jennifer gazed at him with a mix of yearning and contemplation before she responded. He has a baseball game tomorrow after school at 3, if you're interested in joining. Anthony nodded, a wave of optimism washing over him for the first time in days. Though modest in scale, it marked the beginning of something new. As Jennifer stood to depart, he summoned her with one final call. Thank you, Jen and Jennifer. She hesitated briefly, turning away from him. Please, Anthony, don't let me look back on this with regret. I can't bear the thought of you being in pain. As he observed her departure, Anthony silently vowed to himself and to his son. This time he would ensure every detail was perfect. Regardless of the price or the sacrifices involved, Christopher and Jennifer would always come first for him. His phone vibrated, signaling a message from his assistant in Chicago. Board meeting arranged to address your prolonged absence. Your presence is urgently needed. Without a moment's pause, Anthony erased the message. Some decisions, in the end, are simpler than they appear. The baseball field at Millbrook Elementary School thrummed with the vibrant energy of numerous uniformed children and eager parents. Anthony, dressed in jeans and a casual polo shirt, a deliberate shift from his typical Italian suit, stood quietly in the distant bleachers. Christopher, donning the number 7 jersey, engaged in warm-up exercises alongside his teammates. From afar, Anthony noticed the resolve etched on his son's face, the intensity with which he focused on each pitch, reminiscent of his own concentration at that very age. He takes the mound as the starting pitcher. A well-known voice echoed beside him. Jennifer settled into her seat, maintaining a measured distance. Highest strike average recorded in the minor leagues. Her voice brimmed with pride, and Anthony couldn't help but feel a sharp twinge of regret for the accomplishments that had slipped through his fingers. What was the beginning of his journey into playing? He inquired gently. Jennifer paused, contemplating her response. It was, in fact, the brainchild of his grandmother. Eleanor attended every game. She remarked that baseball ran in the Maxwell's blood. Crimson fluid. The thought of her grandmother stirred a new surge of remorse. How many games had she been to instead? How many tales about Christopher had she attempted to convey in the phone calls that went unanswered? The game commenced, and Anthony observed with rapt attention as his son commanded the pitcher's mound with skill. His posture, his concentration, even the way he adjusted his cap, were gestures that appeared to reflect his own childhood memories. Strike! The umpire called for the 3rd time, and Christopher celebrated softly, as if he were trying to hold back his excitement. He always does that, Jennifer remarked, a gentle smile gracing her lips. He expresses that he wishes to spare the other boys from feeling upset. You've done an incredible job with him, Anthony murmured, his voice thick with emotion. Just before Jennifer could respond, a murmur swept across the audience. Victoria Winters, clad in her flawless Chanel outfit and towering heels ill-suited for a baseball field, approached them with unwavering resolve. Is it Anthony Maxwell? Her voice sliced through the air with sharp precision. It's been 3 days since my calls have gone unanswered. A phone call that ended it all, and here you are watching baseball in some remote town. The game came to a near halt. Every eye was drawn to the dramatic scene that was unfolding. Christopher, standing on the pitcher's mound, observed with keen interest. Jennifer rose suddenly. I'm going to get something to drink, she said quietly, clearly uneasy. No. Anthony grasped her wrist with a tender touch. As he faced Victoria, his voice carried a surprising firmness that caught everyone off guard. Even him. It's time for a conversation. However, this is not the place. Not at this moment. Absent from this place. Not at this moment. Victoria let out a laugh filled with disbelief. You end our wedding plans with a phone call and you believe you can... Is that your child? She paused mid-sentence, her gaze locked onto Christopher, who remained observing them from the field. The likeness to Anthony was unmistakable. The ensuing silence was overwhelming. Jennifer moved forward instinctively, as though she aimed to shield Christopher, even from afar. Indeed, Anthony responded succinctly, "He is my son." Victoria swayed as though she had received a sharp blow. "For how long were you aware?" "I discovered it 4 days ago." "So, have you made your choice?" Victoria's voice trembled. "Have you made your selection? This modest existence overshadowing all that we've created?" "It isn't a matter of choice, Victoria." Anthony responded gently. "It's a shift in direction. A task I should have tackled ages ago." Tears cascaded down Victoria's flawlessly adorned visage. "You'll come to wish you hadn't, Anthony. Once the excitement fades away. When you come to understand all that you're discarding." He cut her off. "My sole regret is that it took me an extended period to grasp what truly holds significance." Victoria cast a final glance at Christopher, then shifted her gaze to Jennifer, and ultimately settled on Anthony. In silence, she pivoted sharply and departed, her heels echoing in the charged stillness. The game gradually picked up again, yet Christopher appeared to have misplaced a bit of his focus. His subsequent throw was a ball, an occurrence that was unusual by his standards. He understood, Jennifer murmured, the resemblance, the dispute. "He's quite perceptive, Anthony." In a way that seemed to validate her statement, Christopher cast his gaze upon them between pitches, his green eyes, reminiscent of the Maxwells, brimming with unspoken inquiries. She resolved to convey her thoughts, her voice quivering just a bit. "This evening. I must ensure he doesn't hear it from anyone else." Anthony sensed his heart pounding in his chest. "Would you like me to?" "Negative." She interrupted him. "I'll take care of that. I must be the one to tell him first. Subsequently, we shall see what unfolds." The remainder of the game unfolded in a haze. Christopher managed to rally and lead his team to victory, yet his celebration was subdued, his gaze frequently drifting back to the stands where Anthony remained seated. As the final whistle blew, Jennifer rose from her seat. "I will go and retrieve him. Kindly refrain from attempting. Not today. He will require some time to reflect on everything." Anthony nodded, his heart caught in a struggle between the urge to rush to his son and the understanding that he must honor Christopher's space. "Jennifer," he called as she turned to leave, "convey to him my pride, my admiration for today's game, for his character, for all that he represents." She hesitated briefly, and Anthony was certain he caught a glimpse of tears in her eyes before she turned and made her way toward their son. That night, in the solitude of his grandmother's mansion, Anthony stumbled upon a photo album that Eleanor had concealed within her desk. Each page revealed snapshots of Christopher's life. His first day at school, birthdays, baseball games, precious moments that his grandmother had cherished, patiently awaiting the day he would be prepared to discover them. "Apologies, Grandma," he whispered into the stillness of the home, "but I assure you I will make things right." The phone buzzed to life, the familiar call from the Chicago office once more. This time, he didn't even take a moment to glance at the message. Certain priorities, after all, stand out unmistakably. The evening following the baseball game stretched on endlessly. Anthony lay awake, conjuring the dialogue between Jennifer and Christopher, picturing their expressions, the inquiries, the potential tears. As dawn broke, his phone buzzed with a message from Jennifer. "He is eager to have a meeting with you. Morning meal at Miller's Diner." Miller's Diner stood as a beloved landmark in Millbrook, the very spot where he and Jennifer would indulge in milkshakes after school. 15 years had passed, and there he was, seated at a Formica table, his hands trembling ever so slightly as he awaited what was to come. The doorbell chimed, and Christopher stepped inside, gripping Jennifer's hand firmly. His eyes, mirroring his father's, held a faint redness, a testament to a restless night. "Good morning," Jennifer said gently, leading Christopher to the table. The boy settled into his seat, his gaze fixed on Anthony, observing him with an unexpected depth for his age. The stillness that ensued was overwhelming. "Is it true that you are my father?" Christopher finally inquired, his tone quiet yet resolute. Anthony gulped. Indeed, I am. What has kept you from visiting me until now? The question struck Anthony with the force of a gut punch. Jennifer's body stiffened beside him, yet she chose to hold her tongue. Due to a significant error on my part, Anthony responded with complete honesty. I wasn't aware of your situation, but that doesn't justify anything. You really missed out on this one. Christopher furrowed his brow, contemplating the details. Grandma Eleanor would occasionally share stories about you. She mentioned that you constructed impressive structures in Chicago. Indeed, that is correct. Anthony wore a wistful smile. Your grandmother? She was an extraordinary woman. She attended every single one of my games, Christopher continued. She remarked that I played exactly as you did at my age. The waitress came over, briefly interrupting the charged atmosphere. Christopher chose pancakes drizzled with chocolate syrup, just like the ones Anthony used to enjoy in his youth. Mom mentioned that you're living in Millbrook now, the boy remarked, fiddling with his napkin. If you wish, Anthony responded gently. I would really like to understand you more, Christopher, and to share in your journey. Chris, the young man corrected. People refer to me as Chris, but when I find myself in a bit of a predicament, my mom opts for my full name. Jennifer chuckled gently, the initial manifestation of tranquility in the early hours. Breakfast unfolded at a leisurely pace, as Christopher interspersed the meal with occasional inquiries about Chicago, baseball, and Anthony's life. It was astonishing how, even after years of separation, they still exhibited so many similar tastes and mannerisms. Just then, Anthony's phone rang, breaking the moment with yet another call from Chicago. This time, it was Bernard Wilson, the esteemed chairman of the board. Apologies, Anthony murmured, brushing off the call. Is this your creation? Christopher inquired with interest. Indeed, though it holds little significance at this moment. Jennifer regarded him with a hint of doubt. Anthony, if you find it necessary. No, he interrupted with conviction. This holds greater significance. At that moment, the phone began to ring repeatedly, over and over. Mr. Maxwell, the waitress came over with a landline phone. An urgent call awaits you from Maxwell Enterprises. Anthony let out a deep sigh, his frustration palpable. Excuse me, he remarked, rising to his feet. In the restaurant corridor, Bernard bypassed any form of small talk. The board will convene in 1 hour. Your absence is causing us to lose the Miller contract. There are countless fortunes on the line, Maxwell. You need to return to Chicago today, or we will begin the process of selecting your successor. Anthony peered through the kitchen door, observing Christopher chuckle at something Jennifer had remarked. His child, his loved ones. Then vote, he said plainly before ending the call. Upon his return to the table, Christopher regarded him with a curious gaze. Your expression suggests concern. It's insignificant. With a gentle smile, Anthony took his seat once more. Hey, what do you think about heading to the baseball field after school today? Let's work on our pitching skills. The boy's expression brightened. May I, mother? Jennifer paused briefly, locking eyes with Anthony. Absolutely, my dear, but just until 6. There is an assignment awaiting your attention. The remainder of breakfast unfolded with greater ease. As the moment arrived for Christopher to head off to school, he caught Anthony off guard with a brief, bashful embrace before dashing out to the car. He's incredible, Anthony whispered, observing them as they drove away. His phone buzzed once more. A communication from the council. Voting has been finalized. Replacement has been authorized. We will reach out to your legal representatives. Anthony set the phone down, a calm smile gracing his features. The enterprise he had dedicated years to constructing. The realm that held such significance. Everything felt trivial in the wake of the embrace he had just experienced. That afternoon, as he guided Christopher through the nuances of flawless pitching, Anthony Maxwell finally grasped the wisdom his grandmother had been imparting to him all those years. Some treasures are beyond monetary value. Dad, Christopher exclaimed, experimenting with the word for the first time. Could you please go over that pitch with me one more time? In that instant, Anthony realized he had chosen wisely. The news of the collapse of the Maxwell empire swept rapidly through Millbrook. The community publication blared the title, "Local Tycoon Loses Command of Billion-Dollar Enterprise," and murmurs trailed Anthony at every turn. Yet, all of that faded into insignificance when I thought about those afternoons spent on the baseball field with Christopher. 2 weeks had gone by since breakfast at Miller's Diner, and a pattern was starting to take shape. Anthony observed Christopher's games, assisted with his math homework, which was his favorite subject, and slowly nurtured a bond with his son. On that particular morning, as he sorted through documents in his grandmother's office, Anthony stumbled upon an old, meticulously sealed box adorned with his name, inscribed in Eleanor's graceful handwriting. "I never thought I'd come across this," Rose remarked from the doorway, balancing a tray of tea. "It was crafted by your grandmother during the final months of her life." With great care, Anthony lifted the lid of the box. Within the confines of the room, he stumbled upon a collection of letters, numerous in quantity, each one bearing his name, yet none had ever been dispatched. The initial one was recorded 6 years prior. "Dear Anthony, today I had the pleasure of meeting your son." Jennifer felt a wave of fear and isolation. Yet Christopher stood out as the most remarkable child I have ever encountered. He possesses your gaze, your grin, and that unwavering resolve that you have consistently demonstrated. Just as your grandmother would, I implore you to return home. There is an abundance of knowledge to acquire. Tears welled in her eyes as she pored over letter after letter, each recounting cherished moments of Christopher's life that had slipped away from him. Mr. Maxwell was lost in contemplation when Rachel, his former assistant, broke the silence. "Bernard Wilson has arrived." Anthony stood tall, taken aback. Bernard, the chairman of the board, stepped into the office, his flawless suit standing out against the understated decor. "It's time for a conversation, Anthony." With a quiet grace, Rose slipped away, gently shutting the door as she departed. "If you think you can convince me to return, I'm here to present this to you." Bernard cut him off, slamming a folder down onto the table. "Your grandmother held more than just a stake in Maxwell Enterprises. She held the most significant stake in the company." Anthony grasped the documents, a look of bewilderment crossing his face. "What are you referring to?" "Eleanor Maxwell concealed her shares for years by utilizing a network of shell companies. Upon her passing, those shares were transferred to you. You cannot be removed by the board. You hold the majority stake in the company." The realization hit Anthony with the force of a lightning strike. His grandmother, ever so perceptive, had safeguarded his future even in moments when he overlooked her wisdom. "What prompts you to share this with me at this moment?" Bernard let out a weary sigh as he settled into his seat. "Eleanor extracted a promise from me. She mentioned that eventually you would realize there are matters of greater significance than just business. When that day arrived, I knew it was essential to ensure you didn't lose everything by choosing wisely." In that instant, Jennifer emerged in the doorway, her face ashen and her demeanor restless. "Anthony, we must have a conversation." At this moment, there was an urgency in her voice that compelled Anthony to rise at once. "Bernard, shall we pick this up at a later time?" In the back garden, Jennifer paced restlessly, her distress evident in every step. Christopher stumbled upon a collection of forgotten letters tucked away in the attic. "Correspondence I composed for you throughout your pregnancy." Anthony felt a heavy weight in his chest. What was their response? "The truth," Jennifer replied, her voice quivering with emotion. "I attempted to share the news about the pregnancy with you. I traveled to Chicago in search of you." "What is it, Jennifer?" "I saw you there," she exclaimed, tears cascading down her cheeks. "Alongside Victoria. You appeared utterly joyful, an ideal match in every way. For 4 months, I poured every last bit of my resources into the search for you. And when I finally discovered the truth, you were already committed to her." The recollection struck Anthony with the force of a blow. The celebration on the terrace of the Drake Hotel, 5.5 years past. He had only just encountered Victoria. "Why was that never shared with me?" "Since it appeared you had moved on," Jennifer shouted. I hesitated, fearing I might be the small-town girl disrupting your flawless existence. For the reason that you continued to love me, Anthony said gently. The stillness that ensued was overwhelming. As Christopher perused the letters, Jennifer pressed on, dabbing at her tears. He possesses all the knowledge now. Reflecting on our initial encounter, the blossoming of our affection, the unraveling of our relationship, and the moment I chose to stop sharing details about him with you. Where could he be? On the diamond. He mentioned that he required some time to reflect. Anthony acted without a moment's pause. I will have a conversation with him. Anthony, Jennifer called out to him as he made his way to the car. He discovered this as well. She extended a delicate velvet box. Within lay the engagement ring he had chosen for her 15 years prior. The week leading up to their monumental clash. You held onto it. It's difficult to release certain things, she whispered. In the quiet of the baseball field, Christopher found himself seated alone in the stands. A stack of aged, yellowed cards lay beside him. May I take a seat? Anthony inquired gently. The boy shrugged, yet he shifted to create space. Did you cherish her? After a prolonged silence, Christopher inquired. Above all else, Anthony responded with sincerity. What comes next? Anthony gazed at his son, youthful yet remarkably insightful. Now I realize that certain affections linger on indefinitely. They patiently bide their time, anticipating the perfect moment to return. Christopher grasped one of the letters. Mom expressed that you were her greatest love. She wished that I possessed your smile and your heart. Indeed, you do. Anthony wore a wistful smile. You possess the finest qualities from each of us. Are you departing once more? Absolutely not. Anthony responded with conviction. Not if the fate of every structure in Chicago hinges on it. Christopher nestled closer, allowing his head to rest gently against his father's shoulder. Commitment. I promise, Anthony whispered, embracing his son tightly. Some decisions, once taken, are eternal. As the sun lingered over the baseball field, father and son shared a quiet moment, the unspoken words between them weaving a narrative of affection, sorrow, and renewal that was poised to embark on its next chapter. The unveiling of the letters transformed everything. The subsequent days unveiled a fresh dynamic among Anthony, Jennifer, and Christopher, as though a shroud of secrets had at last been lifted. On a Saturday morning, Anthony made the choice to embark on the journey of rebuilding. What do you think about having a picnic? During breakfast at Jennifer's house, a weekend ritual they had come to cherish, he made a suggestion. At Lake Monroe, reminiscent of times gone by, Jennifer ceased serving pancakes, her hands trembling ever so slightly. Lake Monroe was their sanctuary, the spot of their inaugural kiss, in the place where they envisioned their future, where he planned to propose to her before everything unraveled. Please, Mom, Christopher pleaded, his eyes sparkling with excitement. Are we able to go fishing as well? Jennifer gazed at Anthony, who wore an expression full of hope. Very well. He ultimately surrendered. However, the two of you will take care of all the preparations. The morning unfolded in a vibrant flurry. Christopher assisted Anthony in crafting the sandwiches, while Jennifer meticulously arranged a basket filled with fruit and beverages. The familiarity of the scene captured the attention of all the adults present. By the lake, Christopher was trying out his new fishing rod, a thoughtful gift from Anthony, while Jennifer settled beside her former boyfriend on the checkered blanket. It brings back memories of that summer, she remarked gently, prior to all else. Before I messed it all up, Anthony included. We each erred in our own ways. Jennifer let out a weary breath. I ought to have put up a stronger fight. I ought to have pressed the point about Chris. Anthony retrieved an item from his pocket. The petite velvet box that Jennifer had revealed to him just a few days prior. Were you aware that I intended to propose in this very spot? The final week leading up to our confrontation. Jennifer paused, her breath caught in her throat. Anthony. Negative. He interjected softly. This is something I must express. Everything was meticulously arranged. The fading light of day, the blossoms. I managed to persuade old Pete to strum our song on the guitar. However, that proposal from Chicago arrived, and I have wandered off course. Father, father, Christopher exclaimed with enthusiasm. I have won. The two adults observed the boy as he grappled with his initial catch. His expression blended focus and delight, evoking memories of Anthony in his younger days. He is truly remarkable, Anthony whispered under his breath. How could I have squandered so many precious moments? We have arrived. Jennifer responded gently. That is what truly holds significance. The day unfolded like a vivid dream. Christopher moved back and forth between casting lines with Anthony and settling onto the blanket for a bite to eat, sharing tales and inquiring about his parents' youthful days. So, this is where you crossed paths? He inquired, taking a bite of his sandwich. Your mother sat beneath the oak tree, engrossed in The Little Prince. Anthony gestured towards a venerable tree standing by the lake's edge. I aimed to showcase my fishing prowess, but instead, I found myself taking an unexpected plunge into the water. Jennifer chuckled at the recollection. He appeared completely drenched yet still made an effort to exude charm. Was it successful? Christopher inquired with interest. Approximately. Jennifer beamed. At least I have a date for some hot chocolate. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow of orange and pink across the sky, Christopher drifted off to sleep on the blanket, weary from a day filled with adventures. He appeared utterly serene, Jennifer remarked, gently brushing a strand of her son's hair aside. Anthony inhaled deeply, summoning his resolve. Jen, I understand that it might feel premature, and there's much to restore. As he lifted the lid of the velvet box, the ring was unveiled, glimmering with promise. I'm not requesting anything at this moment. I want you to understand that my love for you has never wavered. And if one day, Anthony, Jennifer interjected, her eyes glistening with unshed tears, there exists a profound connection between us, filled with a rich tapestry of history, deep-seated pain, and an abundance of love, he added. Observe him, Jen. Observe our family. Could we possibly have this opportunity once more? Just as Jennifer was about to respond, Christopher shifted in his slumber, murmuring something about flying fish. Their laughter mingled gently, the weight of the moment lifted by the pure innocence of their son. One day at a time, Jennifer finally responded, her hand gently resting on Anthony's atop the blanket. Let's reconstruct this properly, for the sake of our family. Anthony nodded, tucking the ring away while their fingers remained intertwined. The sun dipped lower in the sky above Lake Monroe, a quiet observer of yet another unfolding chapter in their tale. As they made their way home, Christopher stirred momentarily in the back seat of the car. It was the most incredible day, he murmured drowsily. Jennifer and Anthony shared a look in the rearview mirror, a wordless connection flowing between them. Some bridges, after being rebuilt, emerge even more resilient than they were before. That evening, after parting ways with Jennifer and Christopher at their home, Anthony made his way to his grandmother's grand mansion. In the study, he discovered yet another letter from Eleanor, as though she possessed an uncanny foresight of what was about to unfold. Dear Anthony, genuine affection requires time and understanding. It lingers, absolves, and reconstructs. As you take in these words, I trust you will grasp that certain treasures transcend monetary value, and that the most meaningful investments are those we nurture together as a family. With all my love, Grandma Eleanor. Anthony drifted into slumber, the letter resting gently on his chest, his dreams filled with visions of future picnics, baseball games, and a family that felt whole at last. As autumn settled over Millbrook, it ushered in a vibrant tapestry of hues and transformation. The trees on the Maxwell estate shimmered in hues of crimson and amber. Within the confines of the mansion, Anthony confronted his own metamorphosis. In the quiet of his grandmother's study, he pored over the latest proposal from the board of Maxwell Enterprises, an enticing offer to purchase his shares for an extraordinary amount, contingent upon his total surrender of control over the company. During the video chat, Bernard clarified that the documents only require your signature. That's quite a generous proposal, Anthony. A fortune beyond what one could exhaust in numerous lifetimes. Anthony turned his chair towards the window, observing Christopher frolic in the garden with his new dog, a golden retriever that Jennifer had ultimately permitted after weeks of shared persuasion from both father and son. "What if I choose not to sell?" he inquired, his thoughts already crafting an alternative strategy. Bernard let out a weary breath. "Then you must seize the presidency with determination. The board has decided that an absent CEO is no longer acceptable. What if I could operate it from Millbrook, a company comparable to Maxwell Enterprises, based in a small town?" Bernard chuckled without any trace of amusement. "The council would never approve it. The board is left with no alternative," Anthony stated with conviction. "Don't forget, I'm the one holding the majority of the shares." In that instant, Jennifer emerged in the office doorway, holding an aged box. Her complexion was ashen. "Bernard, I'll return your call shortly." Anthony swiftly concluded the video conference. "Jennifer, could you share what occurred?" She placed the box on the table, yet another of Eleanor's cherished belongings. "This discovery was made in the attic. You should definitely take a look at it." Within the confines of the box lay aged documents, faded photographs, and a personal diary. The images depicted Anthony's father, Richard Maxwell, in his youth, standing alongside a man Anthony identified as Jennifer's father. "Our parents were partners," Jennifer revealed, her voice quivering just a bit. "Prior to the tragic event, before your father's passing, they were collaborating on a project. Maxwell Enterprises had its beginnings outside of Chicago. Anthony, this is where it all began, in Millbrook." As Anthony turned the pages of his father's diary, he unearthed a narrative that was entirely unfamiliar to him. Maxwell Enterprises emerged as a modest construction venture, established by Richard Maxwell and Daniel Lawrence Sr. After Richard's tragic car accident, Jennifer's father had no choice but to sell his share for a mere fraction of its worth to settle medical debts. "My goodness," Anthony murmured, "the puzzle is coming together. That's the reason your family held such strong resentment towards us. That's the reason that's the reason my father never accepted our relationship," Jennifer added. "He was convinced that the Maxwells had taken away our family's destiny." In that instant, Christopher burst into the office, his dog trailing closely behind him. "Hey Dad, Mom, check out what Max can do now." The two adults observed as the boy beamed with pride, showcasing the trick he had taught the dog to paw, their concerns momentarily set aside in the glow of their son's happiness. Once Christopher departed, Anthony resolved to take action. He proclaimed his intention to resolve this matter. "Anthony, there's really no need for that. Indeed, it is," he interjected softly, "not solely for what has been, but for what lies ahead, for our tomorrow." In the coming weeks, Anthony dedicated himself wholeheartedly to crafting a fresh strategy for Maxwell Enterprises. He converted his grandmother's office into a bustling operations hub, outfitting it with cutting-edge technology that facilitated video conferences with global offices. However, the true highlight of his career was the proposal he submitted to the board, envisioning the establishment of a cutting-edge technology center in Millbrook, destined to become the company's new headquarters. "Returning to our origins," he elaborated during the presentation. Yet, looking ahead, the most crucial aspect of the project was unveiled during a dinner at the Lawrence residence. Anthony declared to Jennifer and her father that he wishes to extend an equal partnership in the company, not as an act of charity or compensation, but as acknowledgement of what it has always deserved to be. Old Daniel Lawrence Sr. gazed wistfully at the man he had once held in contempt. "What is the reason behind this?" "Some debts must be settled," Anthony responded. "And because I wish for my son to understand that we made the right choices." Christopher, engaged in play with Max in the yard, remained blissfully unaware of the significant transformations unfolding within the house. Yet, when his grandfather Lawrence embraced him later that evening, tears glistening in the elder's eyes, he felt a profound shift had occurred. Later that evening, once Christopher was tucked in for the night, Jennifer discovered Anthony on the balcony. "You didn't have to do that," she murmured gently. "Indeed, I did," he responded, drawing her nearer. "For our loved ones, for our kin." The engagement ring lay quietly in his desk drawer, patiently awaiting the perfect moment to shine. Yet, beneath the vast expanse of Millbrook's night sky, with the gentle rhythm of his son's breath drifting in through the open window, Anthony Maxwell came to grasp the profound essence of legacy. It transcended mere corporate empires or bank accounts. It was about making the right choice, even if it came after the opportune moment. It was about creating something that his son would one day take pride in. $1 for your thoughts, Jennifer whispered, leaning her head gently against his shoulder. With a smile, he mused, some fortunes are crafted from love rather than wealth. For the first time in ages, the burden of the Maxwell legacy felt lighter to bear. Winter descended upon Millbrook with an unanticipated intensity. A snowstorm loomed over the town, bringing with it unforeseen winds of change that caught everyone off guard. In the midst of a pivotal video conference regarding the company's transition, Anthony felt his phone vibrate with an urgent message from Jennifer. Chris is experiencing a significant fever. Medical facility. Hurry up. He concluded the meeting abruptly and dashed to his car, paying no mind to the snowflakes that started to drift down. At the hospital, he discovered Jennifer in the emergency room, her expression etched with worry. Pneumonia, she articulated, her voice trembling. He was frolicking in the snow yesterday when Mr. and Mrs. Maxwell, a nurse, called out, causing Jennifer to blush and Anthony to feel a tightness in his chest at the title that wasn't yet official. Lawrence, Jennifer gently corrected. I am Mrs. Lawrence. The physician conveyed that Christopher would require admission to the hospital. The pneumonia was critical, requiring intensive medical attention. As they observed their son in slumber, surrounded by monitors and oxygen tubes, Anthony was engulfed by an unprecedented fear. He'll be all right, Jennifer whispered, almost as if reassuring her own thoughts more than him. He must be. The tempest intensified as the night wore on, cutting Millbrook off from the outside world. The hospital operated on generators, while the roads lay in a state of disrepair, utterly impassable. At that moment, the doctor delivered even more concerning news. Christopher mentioned that he requires a particular medication, but due to the storm, our supply is dwindling. Where might we discover additional information? Anthony inquired right away. The main hospital in Hartford has it, but under these conditions, I'll go, Anthony stated, already grabbing his keys. Anthony, no, Jennifer said, clutching his arm tightly. Driving in the storm is a reckless decision. He's our son, he stated plainly. The glance they shared conveyed everything. Years of pain and bitterness melted away in that instant, giving way to something more profound, more essential. Then I shall accompany you, Jennifer resolved. No, Anthony caressed her cheek softly. Chris requires your presence here. I assure you I will return. Before departing, Anthony paused at his son's room. Christopher lay in a restless slumber. His breaths labored despite the assistance of oxygen. Father, he spoke in a low, drowsy tone, his green eyes dimmed by the heat of illness. I'm right here, champ. Anthony grasped his tiny hand. I will retrieve your medication, all right? Stay resilient. With a subtle smile, Christopher inquired, reminiscent of a Maxwell. Like a Maxwell Lawrence, Anthony gently corrected, pressing a kiss to his warm forehead. The journey to Hartford was a complete ordeal. The snow enveloped the world in a thick white blanket, reducing visibility to nearly nothing. Time and again, Anthony felt the car teeter on the edge of control, yet the thought of his ailing son propelled him forward. At the Hartford hospital, after what felt like an endless wait, Anthony finally received the medicine. The journey back, however, turned out to be even more difficult. A toppled tree obstructed the primary thoroughfare. With no other option, he found himself navigating the winding old mountain road, the very path where his father had met with tragedy all those years ago. That was the moment it all changed. Out of the blue, a deer appeared, prompting Anthony to make a sudden swerve. The vehicle lost traction on the icy surface, whirling perilously near the edge of the cliff. In a dreadful instant, he feared that the past would echo once more, yet something, maybe the essence of his father or the profound bond with his son, urged him to maintain his composure. The vehicle came to a halt mere inches from the precipice. By the time he reached Millbrook Hospital, several hours had slipped away. Jennifer stood in the lobby, her face a mask of frozen tears. "Thank goodness," she murmured, embracing him closely. I believed I had lost you as well." "Never again," Anthony vowed, as he passed the medicine to the doctors. The hours stretched on in a torturous anticipation. Yet slowly Christopher started to show signs of responding to the treatment. His fever subsided and his breathing became more stable. The following morning, as the sun finally pierced the clouds, Anthony observed his son sleeping soundly, with Jennifer dozing in the chair beside him. In that moment, he came to a profound understanding. That night, he confronted the deepest dread he had ever known. The storm wasn't the culprit, nor was it the road that led to his father's absence. It was the dread of experiencing the loss of his family once more. He retrieved the engagement ring from his pocket. He had been holding on to it ever since that day by the lake. This moment was marked by certainty, devoid of any second thoughts. As Jennifer stirred from her slumber, her gaze fell upon the ring adorning her finger, while Anthony knelt beside her, a picture of devotion. "Will you marry me?" he asked, his tone straightforward. "Not out of obligation, not out of necessity, but because I choose to weather every storm of my life with you by my side." At that moment, Christopher opened his eyes, a faint smile gracing his lips as he took in the scene before him. Finally, he whispered, bringing laughter to his parents even as tears streamed down their faces. The storm had moved on, leaving in its wake a town blanketed in snow and a family that emerged stronger, more united than ever before. "Indeed," Jennifer at last responded, pressing her lips to Anthony's while Christopher offered a soft round of applause. "Absolutely, without a doubt." Spring graced Millbrook, ushering in not just the blooming of flowers, but a tide of transformation. Maxwell Lawrence Technologies, now the name of the company, was embarking on the construction of its new headquarters in the heart of the town, turning a neglected site into a beacon of revitalization. Jennifer and Anthony had chosen a modest wedding in June at Lake Monroe, yet prior to that, there was an even more significant ceremony to undertake. "Do you really want to go through with this?" Jennifer inquired, while she deftly adjusted Christopher's tie. In the county courthouse, they sat in anticipation, awaiting the adoption hearing. Following months of legal battles, Anthony was finally able to formalize what his heart had long understood. Christopher was his offspring. "I've never been so sure of anything in my life," Anthony replied, his gaze fixed on Christopher as he meticulously practiced his signature on a blank sheet of paper. The young lad was adamant about inscribing his complete name, Christopher Daniel Maxwell Lawrence. Judge Thompson, a silver-haired woman who had been acquainted with Jennifer since her youth, presided over the ceremony with a gentle smile. She called out to the boy, "Christopher, are you aware of the significance of this adoption?" "It signifies that I now have a father," Christopher responded with a gravity that belied his age. "Yet, in truth, he was my father many years past." The clarity and richness of the response resonated with everyone present. Anthony grasped Jennifer's hand, his fingers brushing against the engagement ring adorning her finger. Following the ceremony, they headed over to Miller's Diner to celebrate. As Christopher relished his chocolate milkshake, he posed a question that caught everyone off guard. "Is it possible for me to have a baby brother now?" Jennifer sputtered on her coffee, as Anthony struggled to suppress a grin. "One step at a time, champ," he said, sharing a significant look with his fiancée. Later that day, as Christopher displayed his new documents to Grandpa Lawrence, Anthony led Jennifer out for a stroll. They paused before a Victorian house on Maple Street, the very one Jennifer had always cherished during their teenage years. "I'd love to hear your thoughts." He extended his hand, offering her a set of keys. Jennifer glanced from the house to the keys, her eyes growing wide with surprise. "Anthony, you didn't... I believed we required a space just for us," he clarified. "A space for our family to flourish." The glistening tears in Jennifer's eyes conveyed emotions that words failed to capture. "And there's one more thing," Anthony said, leading her toward the backyard. A treehouse stood there, its structure only half-formed. Chris and I began constructing it over the weekend, he elaborated. He mentioned that every family's yard requires one. Jennifer examined the intricacies of the project. The tiny windows, the climbing rope, the ideal setting for youthful escapades. You're creating something far beyond a mere treehouse, she remarked gently. You're creating lasting moments. We are, Anthony amended, embracing her from behind. We are collaboratively creating everything at this moment. The joyous sound of laughter broke the stillness of the moment. Christopher dashed down the street, with his grandfather Lawrence trailing behind, clutching the building plans. Dad, Grandpa has come up with an incredible idea for the treehouse, Christopher said with enthusiasm. A pulley system can be constructed to elevate objects with ease. Daniel Lawrence Sr., who had slowly embraced Anthony as a member of the family, extended the drawings. I thought we could collaborate on this, he suggested. Ultimately, creating things has long been a cherished custom in our families. Anthony sensed the gravity of those words. It transcended the mere concept of a treehouse. It was a journey towards mending past scars, connecting the echoes of history with the promise of tomorrow. It would be a privilege, he responded, reaching out his hand to his prospective father-in-law. As the men delved into the intricacies of the project, Jennifer observed the unfolding scene with a heart brimming with emotion. Christopher, perched on the improvised swing that Anthony had crafted, was sketching out his own designs for the treehouse. Mom, he asked, can we paint it blue? It's his favorite color. Absolutely, my dear, Jennifer responded, astonished by how effortlessly her son had adapted to all the transformations. After a family dinner in the new house, Christopher drifted off to sleep on the unpacked sofa, worn out from envisioning enhancements for his future treehouse. He appeared utterly joyful, Jennifer remarked, as she draped a blanket over him. We all are, Anthony said, wrapping her in his embrace. After years of constructing towering skyscrapers in Chicago, I find a deeper sense of fulfillment today, crafting a simple treehouse with our son. Jennifer smiled, fully grasping the sentiment, for sometimes the most significant foundations are not composed of concrete and steel, but rather of love, forgiveness, and second chances. In that Victorian house on Maple Street, with her son resting soundly and her future husband beside her, Jennifer felt a profound sense of belonging, realizing they had at last discovered their true home. The wedding morning arrived beautifully in Millbrook. The surface of Lake Monroe mirrored the azure sky of June, while a soft breeze danced through the wildflowers adorning the ceremony site. At the Maxwell Mansion, where Jennifer was preparing, the ambience was filled with a delightful sense of anticipation. Rose, the housekeeper, was attending to the final touches of the dress, a vintage piece that had once belonged to Jennifer's mother. With a gentle smile, Rose adjusted the veil, embracing the charm of something old. Your mother would undoubtedly feel immense pride. Christopher hurried into the room, fully attired in his pageboy suit, clutching a small blue box. With a sense of pride, he declared, presenting his mother with a delicate bracelet in a lovely shade of blue. My father and I selected it as a team. Jennifer embraced her son, being mindful not to crease his dress. You look absolutely stunning, my dear, like a true Maxwell Lawrence, he said with a grin, causing everyone to burst into laughter. By the lake, Anthony stood anxiously beneath the venerable oak tree where everything first unfolded. The venue had been turned into a whimsical dreamscape, adorned with lanterns suspended from the branches and trails lined with delicate white petals. Bernard Wilson, a dear companion now, was meticulously adjusting his tie. Feeling anxious? For the first time in my life, Anthony confessed, I find myself precisely where I belong. As the music filled the air, it wasn't the usual wedding march that resonated, but rather the enchanting notes of La Vie en Rose strummed on the guitar by Old Pete, just as Anthony had envisioned long ago during his first, unfulfilled marriage proposal. Christopher arrived first, bearing the rings with a hilariously solemn demeanor. As Jennifer made her entrance, everyone rose to their feet, guided by her father. Anthony sensed a sudden stillness in his chest. Jennifer was captivating, yet it was more than her outward charm that excited him. It embodied all that she stood for. Her first love, the father of her child, her opportunity for redemption. As Daniel Sr. placed his daughter's hand in Anthony's, emotion welled up in his eyes, glistening with tears. "Handle my precious with care," he whispered. "With my existence," Anthony vowed. The ceremony was led by Judge Thompson, who had overseen Christopher's adoption. In a moment filled with emotion, she invited the boy to be with his parents. "Today we honor not merely the joining of two individuals," the judge proclaimed, but the formal recognition of a family that love had already created. Christopher grasped his parents' hands tightly as they promised their love to one another. "Jennifer," Anthony started, his voice trembling, "I dedicated years to constructing an empire, unaware that my genuine treasure lay right here. You bestowed upon me the most precious treasure imaginable, our son, and now you're offering me an opportunity to set things right once more. I vow to dedicate my entire existence to being worthy of this love." Jennifer brushed a tear aside before she started her vows. "Anthony, it's often said that we cannot change what has already happened, yet we hold the power to shape the next chapters of our narrative. I select you, now and forever, to craft each new chapter side by side." As the moment for the rings arrived, Christopher showcased them with a radiant smile. With a fresh twist, he declared, eliciting another round of laughter from the crowd. Following the vows, the celebration flowed into the afternoon within the enchanting garden of the Maxwell Mansion. Daniel Sr. captivated the audience with a heartfelt address. "Years ago, when Eleanor Maxwell approached me with her thoughts on intertwined destinies and second chances, I must admit I was skeptical, yet she proved to be correct. Certain narratives require patience to uncover their authentic conclusion." As the bride and groom shared their first dance to the enchanting melody of La Vie en Rose, Christopher gracefully stepped onto the dance floor, transforming the waltz into a warm embrace of family unity. "Look!" someone exclaimed, gesturing towards the sky. A double rainbow arched gracefully over the lake, a stunning emblem of nature's favor for the moment. Christopher hugged his parents and recalled Grandma Eleanor's words about double rainbows being a sign of promises kept. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Jennifer spotted Anthony on the weathered garden swing, observing Christopher as he played with the other kids. $1 for your thoughts," she said with a smile as she settled into the seat beside him. "Life is so funny," he said, drawing her in closer. "At times, it takes losing everything to discover what truly holds significance." "And what truly holds significance?" she inquired, despite already being aware of the response. "This," he replied with a quiet assurance, gesturing to Christopher, to her, to the warmth of their reunited family. "It has consistently been that way." As darkness enveloped Millbrook, the lanterns in the garden cast an enchanting glow, transforming the scene into something truly whimsical. Christopher drifted off in Grandpa Lawrence's embrace, weary yet content. Once more, Jennifer and Anthony found themselves twirling beneath the shimmering stars. Now united as partners, she leaned in close and softly murmured, "I have something to share with you." "What?" he inquired, observing the unique glimmer in her gaze. "It appears that Christopher's desire for a little brother is set to be realized sooner than we anticipated." Anthony ceased his movements, his gaze expanding in surprise. Jennifer nodded, a smile breaking through her tears of joy. Under the vast, starry sky of Millbrook, with his son resting peacefully and his wife embracing a new chapter, Anthony Maxwell came to grasp the genuine essence of success. It wasn't the towering structures in Chicago or the wealth amassed in bank accounts. It was the affection that crafted his family's narrative, layer by layer. If faced with the choice between achieving your dream career in a bustling metropolis or embracing a more straightforward existence surrounded by loved ones in your hometown, which direction would you take and what motivates your decision? Your involvement is crucial to the channel's success. Share your genuine thoughts in the comments section. Thank you for tuning in. If you found the story engaging, we invite you to subscribe to our channel and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your insights and encouragement are incredibly valuable to us. Keep an eye out for more thrilling tales ahead.
Rain poured over the city like silver threads, each drop clinging to the glass, reflecting the glimmering streetlights. Inside the Vaughn estate, Lena stood silently by the window, her fingers absent-mindedly tracing the trails of raindrops running down the cold glass. She was used to this feeling, the isolation, the heavy silence of a house that once overflowed with warmth and laughter. Ever since her mother passed away, everything had become a mere shadow of the past. Her father, James Vaughn, once a lively and devoted man, had slowly drowned in grief and work, his laughter fading into distant memories. And that was when Vivian Rothwell entered their lives. Vivian wasn't just James's new wife. She was the one who controlled everything in the Vaughn household. To outsiders, she was elegance itself, charming, sophisticated, and poised. But behind closed doors, her true nature surfaced. Cold, calculating, every word a carefully crafted dagger wrapped in silk. Lena had learned to read her stepmother's every move, the measured steps, the sharp glances, the subtle yet cutting remarks designed to break her down. Tonight, the sound of heels echoed down the hallway. She knew the storm was coming. The door swung open, revealing Vivian, her smile as sharp as a blade hidden in velvet. "Come downstairs, Lena," she said, her voice smooth as honey, but laced with quiet authority. "There's someone who wants to meet you." Lena turned, keeping her face unreadable. She had no idea what awaited her downstairs, but unease coiled in her stomach, a silent warning that her world was about to change forever. She took a deep breath and stepped out of the room, one step that could alter the course of her life. Lena descended the grand staircase slowly, each step pulling her closer to a fate she hadn't chosen. The soft glow of the chandelier barely illuminated the dark shadows stretching across the vast living room. A deep, authoritative voice cut through the quiet hum of the rain outside. $10 million. That's my offer. An investment in Vaughn Enterprises in exchange for a marriage. Lena froze. Her pulse pounded in her ears. Stepping into the room, she took in the scene before her. James Vaughn, her father, sat in his usual leather armchair, his fingers wrapped tightly around a whiskey glass, his face weary and distant. Beside him stood Vivian Rothwell, her lips curled into a satisfied yet utterly insincere smile. But the man who truly commanded the room was Richard Montgomery. He carried the air of someone who was always in control, his tailored black suit, salt and pepper hair slicked back, and piercing eyes that never wavered. "Marriage?" Lena's voice came out sharp, edged with disbelief. Vivian stepped forward, resting a gentle yet unyielding hand on her shoulder. "Calm yourself, Lena," she cooed, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. "This is an incredible opportunity. Marrying Killian Montgomery won't just secure your future, it will save your father's company." Lena jerked her shoulder away, eyes blazing. "Opportunity? This is a transaction," she spat. "You're selling me off like a piece of property." Vivian let out a soft, patronizing laugh. "Selling you? Don't be so dramatic. Do you have any idea how many girls would kill for this chance?" Lena turned to her father, desperation rising in her chest. She needed him to say something, to fight for her. But James Vaughn only lifted his glass and took another long, slow sip. A sharp pang sliced through her chest. Richard Montgomery observed the exchange with an air of quiet amusement, as if he had already anticipated the outcome. "Oh, do we have a deal?" he asked, his gaze fixed on James. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. Then, at last, James gave a small nod. Lena's world collapsed beneath her feet. Outside, the rain continued to fall. She had been sold, and no one cared but her. The sky was dull gray the next morning, mirroring Lena's mood. Last night's rain had stopped, but the cold emptiness still clung to her, a quiet warning of what was to come. She sat in Vivian's sleek black car, wearing a plain white dress her stepmother had chosen. "Nothing too extravagant," Vivian had said when she handed it to her that morning. "Something appropriate for a girl in your situation." Lena hated the dress. It wasn't a wedding gown. It felt more like a uniform for someone being sent to prison. The car pulled up outside an old courthouse. There was no church, no flowers, no music. Nothing about this resembled a wedding. It was just a deal being finalized in silence. She stepped inside, where a weary-looking judge waited. Her father sat beside Vivian, who looked pleased as ever. On the other side of the room stood Killian Montgomery. Lena had never seen him before, and he wasn't what she expected. He didn't look cruel or arrogant, like a man willing to buy a wife with money. Killian was tall, his gray eyes sharp but not filled with contempt. As she approached, he studied her for a long moment before speaking, his voice low and firm. "I know you don't want this, but I promise you one thing. I won't make it worse than it has to be." Lena didn't know how to respond. She had expected a monster, a man like his father. Instead, she found someone different. The judge began reciting the vows. Everything happened too fast, as if someone had pressed fast forward on her life without her consent. "Miss Lena Vaughn, do you take Killian Montgomery as your lawfully wedded husband?" Her throat closed up. She wanted to say no, to scream, to run, but Vivian's gaze was razor sharp, watching her like a predator. Her father sat still, his hands trembling, unable to meet her eyes. No one was going to save her from this. "I do." The words barely left her lips, carrying the weight of a girl forced into a marriage she never wanted. The wedding band slid onto her finger, cold, foreign. The judge declared them husband and wife. There was no celebration, no applause. Killian leaned in slightly, his voice just above a whisper. "I'm not the husband you expected, but I also won't be the man you fear." Lena looked at him but said nothing, because right now, she wasn't sure what was more terrifying, him or the marriage itself. Lena sat in silence as the luxury car glided through the streets of New York, carrying her toward an unfamiliar world. Towering skyscrapers gleamed under the sun, reflecting a life that seemed beautiful yet unreachable, just like her own now. The sleek black Bentley turned down a private road, passing through the massive wrought iron gates of the Montgomery estate. The building ahead wasn't just a mansion, it was a palace, a masterpiece of stone and glass, its towering windows and manicured gardens screaming of wealth and power. But to Lena, it wasn't a home, it was a gilded cage. When the car stopped, Killian opened the door, offering his hand. She stared at it for a moment before stepping out without accepting his help. He didn't react. He simply turned and led the way inside. Lena nearly lost her breath at the opulence surrounding her. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceilings, their lights reflecting off polished marble floors. Gilded frames held paintings so old they looked like they belonged in a museum. A kind-looking older woman approached with a warm smile. "Welcome to the Montgomery estate, ma'am," she said gently. "I'm Mrs. Collins, the housekeeper. If you need anything, just let me know." She seemed nice, but it didn't change the fact that this wasn't home. Killian led her down a long corridor before stopping at a set of ornately carved double doors. "This is your room," he said, his voice neutral. "You have complete privacy here. No one enters unless you allow it." Lena blinked in surprise. She had expected control, restrictions, but instead he was giving her space? Slowly, she pushed the door open. The room was massive, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a garden full of roses. A grand bed with soft ivory sheets sat in the center, flanked by elegant furniture and a wall of bookshelves. On the polished wooden vanity, there was a note and a key. She picked up the note, her fingers tracing the bold yet refined handwriting. "This is your home. Make it your own." Lena set the card down slowly. She had no idea what awaited her in this new life. But at least in this gilded cage, she had been given a space to breathe. The first few days at the Montgomery estate passed in an unsettling silence. Killian kept his promise. He didn't control Lena, nor did he interfere with her life. But that didn't mean she could forget everything. Vivian had sold her. A quiet rage simmered inside her every time she remembered her stepmother's satisfied smirk, the cold indifference in her father's eyes. But fate, it seemed, had its own plans. One afternoon, as Lena was reading in her room, there was a knock on the door. "You have a visitor," Mrs. Collins said gently. "It's your father." Lena froze. The housekeeper hesitated as if she wanted to say more, but simply gave a soft smile before stepping away. When Lena reached the living room, she could hardly believe her eyes. James Vaughn sat there, looking more broken than she had ever seen him. His hair had grayed significantly, deep lines etched across his face, and his once proud shoulders slumped under an invisible weight. But Vivian was nowhere in sight. "Hey, are you here?" Lena's voice was cold. "Did you come to check if I've adjusted to my new life?" James met his daughter's gaze, regret written all over his face. "Vivian has been arrested," he said quietly. Lena needed a moment to process the words. "Arrested?" she echoed, disbelief lacing her tone. James nodded, his hands trembling slightly as he held his untouched glass of water. "After you left, everything started to unravel. The police launched an investigation into Vaughn Enterprises and found that Vivian had been embezzling millions for years. She was using company money to fund her extravagant lifestyle." Something strange stirred inside Lena. Not joy, not satisfaction, just relief. "And you?" she asked. James let out a bitter chuckle. "I let her control everything for too long. Now I have nothing, Lena." She looked at the man before her, the father she had once loved, once trusted. Now he was just a shell of the man he used to be. And perhaps he had realized it far too late. After meeting her father, Lena felt empty. She had once imagined the day Vivian would finally pay for what she had done, but now that it had happened, the satisfaction she expected never came. Instead, there was only exhaustion. That night, as she sat alone by the massive window in her room, a deep voice broke the silence behind her. "Are you okay?" Lena turned. Killian stood in the doorway, hands in his pockets, his expression unreadable. He rarely initiated conversations with her, so the fact that he was doing so now caught her off guard. "I don't know," she admitted. Killian nodded, as if he understood that feeling better than she did. He stepped forward, pulling a chair closer to her. "Do you want to talk about it?" Lena hesitated. She didn't think he actually cared. They were just two strangers, bound by a marriage neither of them had wanted. But then she realized something. He had never treated her like property. Even though their marriage wasn't built on love, Killian had never forced anything upon her. So for the first time, she decided to trust him. "Vivian was arrested," she said quietly. "She had been embezzling money from my father's company for years." Killian didn't look surprised. "I figured that would happen." Lena turned to him. "You knew?" He shrugged. "Not the details, but I know people like her. They always destroy themselves in the end." A long silence stretched between them, but it wasn't tense like before. "I don't know how I'm supposed to feel," Lena sighed. "You don't have to decide right now," Killian said, his voice calm but surprisingly gentle. "Emotions aren't always as simple as we want them to be." Lena studied him a little longer. She had once thought she would hate this man, but now he didn't seem like a stranger anymore. Maybe this marriage wasn't a prison after all. Maybe it was something else, a beginning she had never expected. In the weeks that followed, the relationship between Lena and Killian began to shift in subtle ways. He was no longer just the stranger she had been forced to marry. He became a part of her life in ways she never expected. At first, it was small things. Killian kept his distance, gave her space, but sometimes he appeared just when she needed someone. One afternoon, Lena took a walk through the estate's garden. The air was calm, the roses in full bloom, but inside, her thoughts were anything but peaceful. She had lost so much: her family, her freedom, the carefree innocence of youth. "You seem to like this garden," a voice came from behind her. Lena turned to see Killian leaning against the glass doorway, a cup of coffee in his hand. "I like the quiet," she admitted. "At least, it doesn't try to control me." Killian nodded, then suddenly asked, "Have you ever thought about leaving?" The question made Lena freeze. Of course she had thought about it. But leaving? And then what? She had no money, no place to go. Her whole world had been controlled for so long that she no longer knew what she actually wanted. "I don't know," she admitted. "Can you give me an answer?" Killian was quiet for a moment before sighing. "I don't think you're the kind of person who lets others decide her life for her." Lena was caught off guard by that statement. No one had ever spoken about her that way before. All her life she had been told what to do, who to be, but for the first time someone was telling her she could choose her own fate. For the first time, Killian wasn't just a husband on paper. He was someone who made her see herself differently. Lena never thought her heart could change. She had entered this marriage with fear and resentment, believing Killian was just like every other man in her life, a person who wanted to control and own her. But he wasn't like that. The change didn't come from some grand moment. It came from the little things. The quiet evenings when Killian sat with her on the balcony, both of them silently watching the city lights. The way he noticed how she liked her coffee and made sure it was prepared exactly right every morning. And most of all, he never forced anything on her. One evening, after dinner on the rooftop, Lena absent-mindedly reached for a napkin. At the same time, Killian moved his hand forward, and their fingers brushed against each other. She felt the warmth of his touch. It was just a fleeting second, but in that second, she realized everything had changed. Lena quickly pulled her hand back, her heartbeat louder than it should be. She looked up and met Killian's gaze. It wasn't cold, it wasn't distant. It was soft, gentle, and something else she had never seen before. Lena started to say something, but the words wouldn't come. Killian only gave a small smile, as if he understood exactly what she was feeling. "It's okay," he said quietly. "Take your time." She nodded, but as she turned away, she knew it was already too late to turn back. Something had begun between them, and it couldn't be ignored anymore. After that moment, Lena knew everything between her and Killian had changed. Neither of them mentioned the way their fingers had touched that night, but it lingered, unspoken yet undeniable. They became more comfortable in the silence. Killian was no longer a stranger she feared, and Lena was no longer just a girl trapped in an unwanted marriage. They were becoming something else. One night, when Lena couldn't sleep, she went down to the kitchen for a glass of water. She didn't expect to see Killian there, sitting at the counter with a glass of whiskey in his hand. "Can't sleep?" he asked, his voice low and warm in the quiet room. Lena nodded, then glanced at him. "And you?" Killian swirled the amber liquid in his glass, the dim light casting shadows across his sharp features, revealing a tiredness she hadn't noticed before. "Neither can I." Lena didn't know why she spoke, but the words slipped out anyway. "Do you ever feel lost?" Killian held her gaze for a long moment before answering quietly. "Everyone does, at some point." Neither of them said anything more, but there was an understanding in their silence. They were two people thrown into a life they hadn't chosen, but now they were learning how to find their own way. And maybe they wouldn't have to do it alone anymore. The storm that night came without warning. Winds howled against the windows, branches scraped against the glass like they were trying to break the silence of the Montgomery estate. Lena jerked awake, her heart pounding in her chest. She hated storms. As a child, whenever there was thunder, her mother would hold her close, soothing her with soft stories. But now her mother was gone, and this massive room only made her feel more alone than ever. A loud crash of thunder shook the walls. Before she could think, she was out of bed, walking down the dimly lit hallway. She wasn't sure where she was going. Her feet simply moved on instinct. It wasn't until she found herself standing in front of Killian's door that she hesitated. But before she could turn away, the door opened. Killian stood there, his shirt unbuttoned at the top, his sharp eyes scanning her face before settling on the lingering fear in her expression. "Are you okay?" His voice was low, softer than usual. Lena didn't know how to answer. She wasn't okay, but she didn't want to admit it either. Killian studied her for a moment, then silently stepped aside, an unspoken invitation. Lena walked in. His room felt warmer than hers. She let out a slow breath as she sank into a chair by the window, listening to the heavy rain pounding against the glass. Killian said nothing, simply poured her a cup of tea from the pot on the table and set it in her hands. A small, quiet gesture, but full of understanding. "Thank you," she murmured. Killian sat across from her, his gaze steady, as if trying to read the thoughts she couldn't bring herself to say. "I used to hate you," Lena admitted suddenly. "I thought you were just another man trying to control my life." Killian tilted his head slightly. And now? She held his gaze for a long moment, then exhaled softly. Now, I'm not so sure. Something shifted in Killian's expression, a flicker of warmth mixed with something more careful. Slowly, he reached up and brushed a loose strand of hair from her cheek. She stopped breathing. They were standing on a fragile boundary, one that, if crossed, would change everything forever. But when Killian finally spoke, his voice was calm and certain. "Lena, I won't do anything you don't want." She didn't know why, but those words made her chest tighten. Not from fear, but from a kind of safety she had never known before. She nodded. And that night, in a room warmer than the raging storm outside, they sat together in silence. No pressure, no expectations, just the quiet presence of one another. And perhaps that was the beginning of something far deeper. After that stormy night, everything between Lena and Killian changed. They didn't talk about it. No one mentioned how Lena had sought him out in the middle of the storm, but the silence between them wasn't the same anymore. Now, when Killian walked into a room, Lena no longer tensed. When their hands brushed accidentally, she didn't pull away so quickly. Her feelings toward him had shifted, in a way she wasn't ready to admit. One morning, as Lena sat reading in the library, Killian walked in, holding 2 cups of coffee. He set one in front of her. "Just the way you like it," he said simply. Lena looked at him, then at the coffee. It was such a small thing, but somehow it warmed her more than the drink itself. "Thank you," she murmured. Killian sat down beside her, opening his own book. They didn't speak, but in that silence, something had shifted. Something familiar. Something more than an obligation. Something neither of them was ready to name. Lena never thought she would have a choice. Her life had always been dictated by others, her father, her stepmother, and now this forced marriage to Killian. But for the first time, she started to wonder, if she could truly choose, what would she want? One afternoon, as Lena stood on the balcony gazing at the endless sky, Killian stepped beside her. They stood there, silent, but no longer distant. "Have you ever thought about the future?" Killian asked, his voice deep and steady. Lena turned to him. The future was never mine to think about. Killian nodded, as if he had expected that answer. He looked at her then, his gaze serious but never demanding. "If you could choose, what would you do?" She didn't have an answer right away. But as she met Killian's eyes, for the first time in her life, she realized she actually had a choice. And maybe that choice had never been clearer. Lena was never the type to act on impulse. Her whole life had been controlled, dictated, and she had learned to be cautious with every decision she made. But with Killian, everything was different. One evening, as they sat by the fireplace, Lena looked at Killian in a way she never had before. He was no longer just the man she had been forced to marry. He was the one who quietly placed a cup of coffee exactly the way she liked it every morning. The one who listened even when she didn't know how to put her thoughts into words. The one who saw her, not as an obligation, but as a person. She set her tea down, taking a deep breath. "I want to try." Killian's brow furrowed slightly, his eyes searching hers. "Try what?" She swallowed, her heart pounding harder than ever. "Try trusting you." The air between them became impossibly still. Killian didn't smile, didn't tease, he just looked at her for a long moment, as if trying to determine whether she truly meant it. Then slowly he held out his hand. Lena stared at it, hesitation flickering in her gaze. But then she placed her hand in his. The warmth of his palm spread through her, but it wasn't just warmth, it was safety, certainty. Lena met his gaze, her eyes filled with something unspoken. Killian held her stare, and this time there was no restraint left. Neither knew who leaned in first, but in the next moment, their lips met. The kiss was hesitant at first, slow and searching, as if they were still testing this new boundary. But then, Killian couldn't hold back anymore. He pulled her closer, his hands cradling her face, deepening the kiss, claiming it. Lena didn't pull away. Instead, she melted into him, surrendering to the moment. From that second on, there was no turning back. Killian lifted Lena into his arms, carrying her to his bedroom, his movements steady, certain, like he had known all along that this was where they were meant to be. When they reached the bed, He paused, searching her eyes for permission one last time. But Lena didn't answer with words. Instead, she slowly unbuttoned his shirt, and Killian knew she had made her choice. That night, they came together, not just in passion, but in trust, in acceptance, in something neither of them had dared to name before. As dawn approached, Lena lay against Killian's chest, their breaths rising and falling as one. And she knew this wasn't just any night. It was the first leap into a love she had never believed she could have. 1 year later, Lena stood on the balcony of the Montgomery estate, watching the golden hues of the sunset bathe the vast gardens below. Everything had changed. She was no longer the girl forced into this marriage. She had chosen to stay, chosen to love Killian, chosen a life she never thought she could have. Her hand rested gently on her stomach, where a tiny life was growing. "What are you thinking about?" Killian's deep, familiar voice broke the silence as he stepped behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist, his chin resting lightly on her shoulder. Lena smiled, leaning into his warmth, the place that now truly felt like home. "I'm thinking about everything," she whispered. "About us, about how it all began, and about our baby." Killian chuckled softly, his hand covering hers, feeling the warmth of their growing child. "If someone had told me a year ago that I would fall in love with the woman I married in a business deal, I wouldn't have believed them." Lena turned to face him, her fingers tracing the face she had come to love more than anything in the world. "And if someone had told me that one day I'd choose to stay because of love, I wouldn't have believed them either." Killian tilted his head down, kissing her, slow and deep the way he always did, with reverence, with devotion. The evening breeze whispered around them, but their hearts had never felt warmer. Their story hadn't begun as a love story, but they had made it one of the most beautiful stories they could write together. Because love isn't something that's predetermined, it's something we choose every single day. And Lena had chosen Killian, just as Killian had chosen her, forever. The elegant restaurant glowed under the warm embrace of soft golden lights. Conversations hummed in the air, blending with the delicate clinking of wine glasses and the gentle laughter of couples celebrating Valentine's Day. Ethan Caldwell sat alone at his table, idly swirling the deep red liquid in his glass, his expression unreadable. He was not a man ruled by emotions. His life was meticulously designed, much like the architectural masterpieces he created, structured, precise, devoid of unexpected variables. But tonight, fate had other plans. As he lifted his glass to take a sip, his gaze wandered across the room, and in that instant, his entire world stopped. There, sitting gracefully at a table in the corner, was a woman with soft brown hair and a radiant smile. Claire Evans. Ethan's breath hitched. 3 years had passed and he had convinced himself that she was nothing more than a memory buried beneath blueprints and relentless projects. Yet here she was, unchanged, still exuding that warmth, that effortless charm that had once unsettled his carefully structured world. But it wasn't just Claire that left him frozen in place. Seated beside her were 3 children. 2 boys dark-haired with piercing blue eyes, eyes that were unmistakably his own, and a little girl, delicate yet fierce, her round eyes a perfect mirror of Claire's. Ethan's grip tightened around his glass, his pulse pounding against his ribs. They looked like him. A cold wave of realization swept over him. 3 years, 3 children, and he had never known they existed. The tightly woven fabric of his perfectly controlled life had just unraveled in an instant. Ethan's heart pounded violently as his eyes remained fixed on the 3 children. Every detail of their faces was too familiar, too precise to be a mere coincidence. The once cozy restaurant now felt suffocating. The hum of conversation around him blurred into static, drowned out by the deafening realization gripping his mind. He couldn't sit still any longer. Ethan pushed back his chair and strode across the room, ignoring the curious glances of other diners. Each step felt heavier, as if the weight of his past mistakes had suddenly settled onto his shoulders. His pulse thundered in his ears. Claire was smiling gently at the children, tucking a loose strand of hair behind the smallest girl's ear. But the moment her gaze lifted and met his, that smile vanished. Their eyes locked, and for a fleeting second, everything else ceased to exist. Ethan opened his mouth, searching for words, but his throat was dry. His gaze flickered between Claire and the children, his mind grasping for an explanation that could make sense of this impossible truth. Finally he spoke, his voice low, strained, and laced with disbelief. "Are they mine?" The question hung between them like a live wire, charged with years of unspoken words and lost time. Claire hesitated. A flicker of something, guilt, hesitation, sorrow, crossed her face. Ethan didn't move. He didn't breathe, he just waited. Then she exhaled softly, holding his gaze with quiet certainty. "Yes, Ethan, they're yours." The ground beneath him felt like it had disappeared. Everything he thought he knew, everything he had built, had just come undone. Ethan stood frozen, each breath feeling heavier than the last. The sounds of the restaurant faded into the background, leaving only Claire and the 3 children he had never known existed. 3 years. 3 years, and she had never told him. His jaw clenched, his emotions a chaotic mix of shock, anger, and something else. Something raw and painful. Why? His voice was low, dangerous. Why didn't you tell me? Claire blinked, something unreadable flickering across her expression, a sorrow so deep it unsettled him. "I tried," she murmured. "I called. I left messages, but you never answered." Ethan's breath caught in his throat. The missed calls, the unread messages. He had assumed she was just reaching out in desperation, trying to hold on to something that had already crumbled. He had shut her out before she could even speak. A cold weight settled in his chest. This was his fault. His gaze flickered to the children. One boy watched him with cautious curiosity, the other more guarded. The little girl clung to Claire's sleeve, her wide eyes wary. 3 years, 3 children, 3 lives he had unknowingly abandoned. Ethan swallowed hard, guilt pressing against his ribs. "I want to meet them." His voice was firm, unwavering. Claire crossed her arms, her brown eyes sharp with warning. "It's not that simple, Ethan. They don't know you. You can't just walk in and claim to be their father." Ethan narrowed his eyes. "They are mine." Claire exhaled slowly. She studied him for a long moment before nodding. "Tomorrow, the park, noon." It wasn't acceptance, it was a test. And this time, he couldn't fail. Ethan stood at the entrance of the park, hands tucked into the pockets of his coat, willing his heartbeat to steady. Children ran past him, laughter filling the crisp afternoon air. This was not his world, a place of chaos, of unpredictability, of emotions running free. Yet today, he had no choice but to step into it. And then he saw them. Claire was walking toward him, her posture composed but guarded. Beside her, 3 small figures moved in sync. Lucas was the first to notice him. The dark-haired boy with bright, curious eyes grinned and bounced on his feet. "Mom, is that the guy from last night?" Claire sighed. Lucas, we talked about this. Ethan crouched slightly, offering a small smile. Yeah, that's me. Lucas tilted his head. Who are you? The question hit harder than Ethan expected. He glanced at Claire, but she remained silent. This was his moment. He turned back to the children, his voice steady but gentle. I'm Ethan, and I'd really like to get to know you. Lucas squinted at him as if measuring the weight of his words, then gave a small nod, an unspoken, okay, we'll see. But Noah was different. The older boy stood with his arms crossed, his deep blue eyes, Ethan's eyes, studying him with quiet suspicion. Why are you here? Noah's voice was sharper, more guarded. Ethan swallowed. Because I wanted to meet you. Noah didn't respond, but his expression said it all. Why now? Why not 3 years ago? Ethan knew earning his trust wouldn't be easy. The silence between them stretched until a soft voice cut through it. Mommy, I'm thirsty. The smallest of the three, Ella, clung to Claire's hand, her voice barely above a whisper. Claire reached into her bag for a water bottle, but before she could twist off the cap, Ethan extended his hand. I got it. Claire hesitated, then handed him the bottle. Ethan crouched slightly, holding it out to the little girl. Here you go. Ella stared at him for a long moment before reaching out and taking it with small, delicate hands. It was a tiny gesture, but in that moment, it felt monumental. Noah still didn't trust him. But Lucas was willing to give him a chance, and Ella no longer looked at him like a stranger. It was a start. Ethan never thought a simple meeting could leave him feeling so exhausted. But he didn't stop. The next day, he returned to the park, then the day after that, and the one after that. At first, Claire kept her distance, watching from afar. She didn't interfere, but she didn't make things easier for him either. This was his battle to fight. Lucas was the easiest. The boy was a ball of energy, always dragging Ethan into new adventures, racing, climbing, exploring. Lucas embraced Ethan's presence without hesitation. Ella was more reserved, but slowly she began to warm up. She wouldn't speak much, but she would sit beside him when he read stories to the three of them. One afternoon, just as he paused to take a sip of water, a small voice spoke up. Uncle Ethan, can you keep reading? His heart clenched. Noah, as Ethan had expected, was the hardest. The boy kept his distance, always watching, always skeptical. When Ethan played with Lucas, Noah stood back with his arms crossed. When Ethan read to Ella, Noah pretended not to listen. But Ethan knew better. One evening, as Ethan walked them home, Noah suddenly spoke. Are you going to leave again? The question hit him like a punch to the gut. Ethan exhaled slowly, crouching down to meet Noah's gaze. No, buddy, I'm not going anywhere. Noah didn't react, didn't say a word. He just shrugged and walked inside. Ethan knew the boy still didn't trust him. But at least now, Noah was asking questions. It was a start, a crack in the wall. Ethan had thought things were getting better. He was wrong. That day, he had promised to take the kids to the aquarium after school. Lucas had been so excited he couldn't stop talking about sharks. Ella had picked out a blue dress to match the ocean. Even Noah, though he wouldn't admit it, had looked forward to it. But then work got in the way. An urgent meeting, a high-profile client who needed him immediately. Ethan told himself it would only take an hour. But by the time he was done, the sun had set. When he arrived at Claire's house, the door opened to reveal the three children. Lucas curled up on the couch, Ella clinging to her mother, and Noah. Noah looked at him with an expression Ethan would never forget. Cold, disappointed. You promised. Noah's voice wasn't loud, but it was heavy. Ethan opened his mouth, but no excuse would be enough. Noah's hands clenched into fists. You're just like before. Claire crossed her arms. Her expression wasn't angry. It was worse. It was tired. Go home, Ethan. The door closed. The silence was deafening. Ethan sat in his car for what felt like hours, staring at the darkened windows of Claire's house. He had spent a year proving himself, yet in one moment he had undone it all. Ethan sat in his car, staring at the closed door in front of him. He had ruined everything. His phone buzzed, a message from his assistant reminding him of tomorrow's meeting. But for the first time, Ethan didn't care. This couldn't be how it ended. He stepped out of the car, walked up to the door, and knocked softly. Claire opened it, but instead of anger, her face held something else: worry. Behind her, on the couch, Noah lay curled under a blanket, his face flushed with fever. Lucas and Ella sat beside him, their small faces etched with concern. Ethan's chest tightened. "What's wrong with him?" His voice was low, urgent. Claire sighed. "He's had a fever since last night. He's been exhausted all day." Without hesitation, Ethan stepped inside. "I'm staying." Claire hesitated for a second but didn't argue. That night, Ethan stayed by Noah's side. He changed cold compresses, held the boy's small hand in his own, reassured Lucas and Ella when they grew anxious. Near dawn, Noah's eyelids fluttered open. His voice was hoarse but steady. "You're still here?" Ethan squeezed his son's hand gently. "I told you, buddy. I'm not going anywhere." For the first time, Noah didn't turn away from him. The next morning, soft sunlight streamed through the curtains. Noah was still weak, but he was awake. Lucas and Ella sat on the floor, drawing messy little pictures while Claire poured 2 cups of coffee. Ethan sat across from her, his hands resting on the table, as if letting go would make this moment disappear. Claire looked at him, her voice softer than before. "You really stayed?" Ethan tightened his grip around his coffee cup and nodded. "I promised." A silence stretched between them, but this time, it wasn't heavy. Finally, Claire sighed, as if letting go of something she had been holding on to for too long. "Stay for breakfast." For a second, Ethan was caught off guard. This wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't a promise of anything beyond this moment. But it was a chance, and this time, he wasn't going to waste it. In the days that followed, Ethan kept showing up, not with promises, but with actions. He arrived early to help take the kids to school. He waited patiently for Noah to let him in, and one day, as they were leaving the park, the boy unexpectedly reached for his hand. It lasted only a moment, but it was enough. One evening, after walking the kids home, Ethan hesitated at the door. Claire looked at him, something softer in her gaze. "I don't know what the future holds," Ethan murmured, "but I know one thing: I'm never leaving again." Claire didn't answer right away. Then, slowly, she smiled. A real smile. "I know." And for the first time, when the door closed, Ethan didn't feel like he was being shut out. For the first time, he felt like he had finally found his way home. A year had passed. Ethan was no longer the man he used to be, the man trapped in work, ruled by fear. Now he was a father. He knew how to tie Lucas's shoelaces, that Ella needed a bedtime story to fall asleep, and that Noah would never openly say he needed him, but the silent nods, the quiet moments sitting together, were proof enough that he did. But there was still one thing left to do. He had to make things right with Claire. That evening, Ethan took Claire to the beach, the place where they had made some of their happiest memories. She stood quietly, watching the waves roll in, her expression distant yet serene. "Do you remember the first time we came here?" Ethan asked, his voice gentle. Claire smiled softly. "How could I forget?" Ethan took a deep breath before turning to face her. "I lost you once, and for the longest time I told myself it was for the best, that work, success, and control were all I needed. But I was wrong, Claire. I was so wrong. You were my home, and I walked away from it. I won't make that mistake again." Claire's breath caught in her throat as Ethan knelt down, a small velvet box in his hands. "I'm sorry for the pain I caused you. I can't change the past, but I want to spend my future making it up to you. Claire Evans, will you marry me?" Tears shimmered in Claire's eyes, but this time they weren't from pain. They were from joy. Yes. 3 months later, under the golden glow of a sunlit garden, Claire walked towards Ethan in a simple yet elegant white dress, their children standing by her side. Lucas beamed, Ella waved excitedly, and Noah, though trying to appear composed, couldn't quite hide his smile. As Ethan kissed Claire, the children erupted into cheers. This time, they were truly a family. And that was the story of Ethan, Claire, and their journey to becoming a family again. What do you think? Do you believe people can truly change for those they love? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more heartwarming stories. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Thank you for watching until the very end. See you in the next story. Alice Grant adjusted her scarf against the chilly evening breeze as she stood before the towering Carter mansion. The grand estate, framed by sprawling gardens and iron gates, loomed in front of her like a relic of forgotten glory. In her heart, uncertainty battled with determination. What if she wasn't enough? What if the man inside those walls was beyond saving? In her hands, she clutched a small suitcase containing her belongings and her unwavering determination. Alice had been hired to care for Lucas Carter, a once celebrated artist whose life had been shattered by a devastating accident. Now trapped in a vegetative state, Lucas was little more than a shadow of the vibrant man whose name once dominated art galleries around the world. For Alice, this wasn't just another job. It was a chance to make a difference, to apply the principles she had spent years studying as a psychologist. Yet, standing there, she couldn't ignore the growing weight of uncertainty pressing down on her. What if her methods failed? What if Lucas was beyond help? The gates opened silently, revealing a long driveway lined with ancient oak trees. As Alice approached the front door, a flicker of doubt crossed her mind. But she quickly shook it off. This was why she became a psychologist, to find light in the darkest of places. What happens, Alice thought to herself, when a heart filled with empathy meets a mind lost in silence? As the heavy oak doors creaked open to reveal the somber interior of the mansion, Alice knew her journey with the Carter family was about to begin. Alice was greeted at the door by Nathan, the Carter family's loyal but reserved butler. His sharp eyes scanned her carefully, though his polite demeanor never faltered. "Miss Grant, welcome. Mrs. Carter is waiting for you in the study," he said with a slight bow, gesturing for her to follow. As they moved through the mansion's vast hallways, Alice couldn't help but take in her surroundings. The Carter mansion was breathtaking, but felt strangely lifeless. The walls were adorned with Lucas Carter's most iconic paintings, vivid landscapes, abstract portraits bursting with emotion, but a layer of dust coated everything, hinting at a home abandoned to grief. In the study, Sophia Carter was waiting. The wife of Lucas was everything Alice expected, elegant, poised, and distant. Her tailored suit and impeccable makeup radiated control, but her eyes betrayed a weariness. She rose from her chair as Alice entered, her movements as deliberate as her words. "Miss Grant," Sophia began, her tone cold and businesslike. "Thank you for coming. Let me make one thing clear. This will not be an easy task. Lucas's condition has been unchanged for months, and while I appreciate your qualifications, I'm skeptical about what you can accomplish." Alice swallowed hard, her hands tightening around the handle of her suitcase. "I understand, Mrs. Carter, but I believe there's always a way, if we're willing to try." Alice maintained her professionalism. "Mrs. Carter, I understand your concerns. My goal is to give Lucas the best care possible, and perhaps a chance at recovery." Sophia studied her for a long moment before nodding curtly. "Nathan will show you to your quarters in Lucas's room. I expect you to report any significant changes. And remember," she added, her voice dropping an octave, "this family does not tolerate failure." As Alice followed Nathan to the west wing of the house, her resolve only strengthened. She entered Lucas's room and was immediately struck by the sterile atmosphere. The bed was surrounded by state-of-the-art medical equipment, its steady beeps the only sign of life. Yet the room lacked warmth, no personal touches, no color, just a stark reminder of his current reality. Her gaze fell on Lucas. Even in his stillness, there was something striking about him. His features, though softened by months of inactivity, hinted at the man he once was, bold, creative, and full of life. Nearby, dusty paintbrushes and an unfinished canvas sat abandoned in a corner. Nathan spoke softly, breaking Alice's thoughts. "He was a remarkable artist, Miss Grant. Before the accident, his work inspired millions." Alice nodded, absorbing the weight of the challenge ahead. As she unpacked her belongings, one thought replayed in her mind. Lucas Carter was more than this silent figure in a bed. She just needed to find a way to reach him. Alice began her first day with Lucas early, entering his room as the morning sunlight filtered through the heavy curtains. She had moved quietly, careful not to disturb the silence that seemed to dominate the space. Standing by his bedside, she introduced herself softly. "Good morning, Lucas," she said, her voice calm and steady. "My name is Alice, and I'll be with you every step of the way. We'll take this one day at a time." The heart monitor's rhythmic beeping was her only response, but Alice wasn't discouraged. She knew this would be a long journey and that progress would be measured in the smallest of steps. Her first task was to make Lucas's environment less clinical. She repositioned his bed closer to the window, allowing more natural light to flood the room. She dusted off the neglected paintbrushes and arranged them on a small table next to an unfinished canvas. As she worked, Alice spoke to Lucas, filling the silence with stories from her own life. "You know," she said, carefully massaging his hand during physiotherapy, "I grew up in a small town. My mother always said that every problem had a solution, even if it wasn't obvious at first." Maybe she was right. By the end of her first week, Alice noticed something unusual. While reviewing Lucas's records with Nathan, she came across a mention of Shadow, Lucas's golden retriever. "What happened to Shadow?" she asked curiously. Nathan hesitated. "After the accident, Mrs. Carter sent him to the countryside. She believed it would be too painful to keep him here." Alice's mind raced. Shadow wasn't just a pet. He was likely a key to unlocking Lucas's memories and emotions. "Nathan," she said with determination, "do you think we could bring Shadow back? It could make a difference." Nathan's expression softened, and after a pause, he nodded. "I'll see what I can do." A few days later, Shadow arrived. The moment Alice saw the dog bounding through the hallway, his tail wagging wildly, she knew she had made the right decision. She introduced Shadow to Lucas carefully, letting the dog sniff around the bed. Shadow's ears perked up as he seemed to recognize his owner, his tail wagging furiously. Without hesitation, the dog climbed onto the bed, nuzzling Lucas's hand as if urging him to wake up. Alice held her breath, leaning closer. For a moment, the room was still, and then it happened. A faint twitch of Lucas' fingers, like a whisper of life breaking through the silence. Her heart leapt. "Lucas," she whispered, her voice trembling, "you're still here." It was the smallest of movements, but it was undeniable. "Nathan," Alice called, her voice trembling with excitement. "Come quickly." When Nathan arrived, he stared in disbelief. "Miss Grant, is that?" "Yes," Alice confirmed, her eyes filling with tears. "It's a response. He's still in there." Encouraged by this breakthrough, Alice expanded her efforts. She played Lucas's favorite classical music, filling the room with the soothing sounds of piano and violin. She also began using aromatherapy, introducing scents like fresh paint and pine wood, fragrances connected to Lucas's work and past. But it wasn't just the therapeutic techniques that mattered. It was the presence of Shadow, who refused to leave Lucas's side. The dog would rest his head on Lucas's lap, his deep brown eyes filled with loyalty. One evening, as Alice prepared to leave the room, she paused to speak to Lucas once more. "You're doing great, Lucas," she said gently. "We'll keep going, step by step. You're not alone in this." In the dim light, Shadow let out a soft whine, as if echoing her sentiment. Alice smiled, feeling a growing sense of hope. For the first time since she had arrived, the Carter mansion didn't feel so lifeless. This was just the beginning, but Alice knew they were on the right path. One crisp morning, Alice decided it was time to take a bolder step. She entered Lucas's room with renewed energy and spoke as if they were longtime friends. "Lucas, I've been thinking," she began, pulling a chair closer to his bed. "This room is nice, but it doesn't feel like you. I read about your studio, where you created your masterpieces. How about we go there today? Maybe it'll help jog your memory." She turned to Nathan, who stood at the doorway. "Can you help me set things up in the studio? I want Lucas to be surrounded by his work again." Nathan hesitated, his brows furrowing in concern. "Ms. Grant, the studio hasn't been touched since the accident. Mrs. Carter might not approve." Alice gave him a determined look. "If there's even a chance this could help him, it's worth the risk." By midday, Nathan had helped her prepare the studio. Dusty canvases were carefully arranged, easels stood upright, and the faint smell of turpentine lingered in the air. With the help of a portable medical chair, Alice and Nathan transferred Lucas into the room, positioning him near a large unfinished painting. Shadow followed, tail wagging, settling beside Lucas like a silent guardian. "This is where your magic happened, Lucas," Alice said, her voice soft but encouraging. She pointed to a canvas with bold strokes of color. "Do you remember this one? It's breathtaking." As Alice continued describing the paintings, Shadow jumped onto Lucas's lap, nudging his hand with his nose. For a moment, the room was silent, the air heavy with anticipation. Then it happened. A faint, strained sound escaped Lucas's lips. "Shadow," he whispered. Nathan, standing nearby, clutched the back of a chair for support, his usually composed face slack with astonishment. "Miss Grant," he stammered, "did he just—" Alice nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. "He did. He's finding his way back," Alice confirmed, tears streaming down her face. "He said, Shadow." It was a breakthrough unlike any other. Lucas's first word in months signaled not just physical progress, but a spark of consciousness returning. Encouraged by this moment, Alice spent the rest of the day in the studio with Lucas. She played soft music and read aloud passages from art books, hoping to rekindle his passion. Shadow never left his side, his presence a constant source of comfort. That night, as Alice prepared to leave, she paused at the door. She glanced back at Lucas, who lay surrounded by his work, and smiled. "This is just the beginning, Lucas. We're getting closer." Lucas's recovery, though slow, was marked by profound and emotional progress. After his first word, Shadow, Alice committed to intensifying her therapeutic efforts, believing wholeheartedly that Lucas's mind was starting to reawaken. The first signs of improvement came during their morning sessions. Each day, Alice worked on Lucas's mobility, gently moving his arms and legs while speaking to him in an encouraging tone. "Good morning, Lucas," she would say softly. "Today we're going to stretch those fingers a little more." Slowly, his responses became more consistent. A faint twitch of a finger, or the slight movement of his foot during therapy. To reconnect Lucas with his past, Alice integrated familiar sensory experiences. She brought in Lucas's art supplies, brushes, canvas, and even his favorite turpentine scent, and used them during their sessions. One day, as she lightly brushed his palm with a paintbrush, Lucas's fingers curled slightly, as though grasping for something. The turning point came when Alice decided to take Lucas out of his room for the first time. With Nathan's help, they carefully transferred him to a wheelchair and brought him to the garden. The fresh air and sunlight seemed to invigorate him, and Shadow, ever the faithful companion, lay at his feet. Alice leaned close, speaking gently. "Lucas, this is the garden you used to sketch. Do you remember the roses? They're blooming beautifully now." As she described the surroundings, Lucas's lips moved. At first, it was a faint, unformed sound, but then he whispered, "Rose." Sophia, who had been watching from a distance, gasped. She rushed to his side, tears in her eyes. "Lucas, you can hear us?" she asked. Lucas blinked twice, a deliberate signal Alice had taught him for yes. From that moment, his progress accelerated. Alice introduced passive exercises to strengthen his muscles and incorporated music therapy with his favorite classical and jazz pieces. Each day, Lucas became more responsive, his voice growing stronger and his movements more deliberate. By the end of the season, Lucas could sit up on his own and form simple sentences. His recovery was a testament to resilience and the unyielding hope Alice brought to the Carter mansion, which was now filled with light, life, and the promise of new beginnings. A year had passed since Alice Grant first stepped through the gates of the Carter mansion. The once somber and lifeless home was now filled with laughter, light, and the vibrant hum of activity. Lucas Carter, who had been trapped in silence and stillness, was no longer a mere shadow of himself. His recovery, though hard-fought, had transformed not only his life but the lives of everyone around him. On a warm spring evening, the mansion's grand hall was abuzz with excitement. Family, friends, and art enthusiasts gathered to celebrate the debut of Lucas's new exhibition, his first since the accident. The gallery was filled with pieces that told the story of his journey, abstract strokes of darkness giving way to vivid bursts of color, a visual representation of despair conquered by hope. Alice stood near the entrance, watching the scene with quiet pride. Shadow, now a constant companion to Lucas, sat obediently by her side, his tail wagging at the joyful energy in the room. When Lucas appeared, walking steadily with the aid of a cane, the crowd erupted into applause. Sophia stood proudly by his side, her arm linked with his. As they reached the front of the room, Lucas turned to address the crowd. "Tonight isn't just about my art," he began, his voice strong and steady. "It's about the people who refuse to give up on me. My wife Sophia, whose strength carried us through the hardest days. My loyal friend Shadow, who reminded me what unconditional love looks like. And most of all, Alice Grant, who saw potential in me when I couldn't see it myself." Lucas turned to Alice, his eyes filled with gratitude. "Alice, you didn't just help me recover. You gave me my life back." The room was silent for a moment before erupting into cheers and applause. Tears streamed down Alice's face as she nodded, overwhelmed by the weight of his words. As the night wound down, Lucas and Sophia approached Alice privately. "We've been discussing something important," Sophia said. "We'd like to fund a rehabilitation center for patients like me," Lucas added, his voice firm. "And we want you to lead it, Alice." Alice's breath caught in her throat, but as she looked at the faces of the people who had become like family to her, she smiled. "It would be my honor," she said. Under the warm glow of the chandeliers, the Carter family and Alice stood together, united by their shared journey. The mansion, once a place of sorrow, had become a beacon of hope, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, miracles could happen when love, determination, and faith allied. And so, as the lights dimmed and the guests departed, the story of Lucas, Sophia, Shadow, and Alice didn't end. It was just the beginning of a new chapter, one filled with infinite possibilities and a future shaped by the belief in second chances.
Subscribe to our channel for more captivating stories. Like this video and comment your thoughts below. A billionaire's fiancé, twin daughters, a 7-year secret. The sterile scent of antiseptic usually brought a sense of calm to Nurse Emily Carter, a seasoned veteran of St. Jude's intensive care unit. But today, It was a suffocating reminder of a past she'd fought desperately to bury. At 30, Emily carried the weight of experience and a quiet strength that made her one of the most respected nurses on the team. "Dr. M!" A childish voice echoed down the hall, and a smile automatically touched her lips. "Anna, I've told you, Mommy isn't a doctor. I'm a nurse," she corrected gently, bending to hug her daughter, who was running towards her with a toy stethoscope around her neck. "But you take care of people just like a doctor," the little girl replied, adjusting her colorful framed glasses on her delicate face. Just behind her, equally blonde and bright-eyed, Lily approached, holding hands with Mrs. Gable, the kind neighbor who looked after the twins when Emily worked extra shifts. "Sorry for the delay, dear. Traffic was impossible on the freeway," Mrs. Gable explained. Emily smiled, kissing her other daughter's forehead. "No problem. You're just in time for me to show you the new pediatric staff lounge. There are children's books you can read while Mommy finishes organizing the files." The twins celebrated with animated applause. At 7 years old, Anna and Lily were perfect miniatures of Emily, except for their eyes, a striking blue-green that she recognized from another face, one she tried daily to erase from her memory. "Just be good, okay? We have seriously ill patients today." "Yes, Mommy," they replied in unison, with that seriousness that always moved her. Emily accompanied her daughters to the colorful, welcoming room, specially created for employees' children, who occasionally needed to be brought to work, a victory she had helped implement after years of requests. While organizing her day's tasks, Emily allowed herself a moment of reflection. 7 years had passed since she first held her daughters alone in this very maternity ward. 7 years building a fortress for 3. She had learned to be both father and mother, to balance the household budget, to work double shifts to ensure the girls had a good school and a decent life. Her cell phone vibrated in her pocket. It was a message from coordination. "New patient transferred to ICU, room 704. Mrs. Eleanor Vance, 67, fall with head trauma. Delicate condition, Vance." The surname hit Emily like a punch to the gut. London was big, but not big enough to erase all coincidences. It wouldn't be the first time she'd attended to someone with the same surname as him. She took a deep breath. "Coincidences happen. Patty, I'm going to 704. Can you keep an eye on my little ones in the lounge?" she asked her colleague passing by. "Of course, those little munchkins are my favorite goddaughters," joked her friend, who had accompanied her through the entire pregnancy and the twins' first steps. The 7th-floor hallway was silent at that early morning hour. Emily gently knocked on the door and entered. The patient, an austere-looking woman even in her weakened state, was connected to monitors tracking her vital signs. Beside her, a younger woman, probably a companion or relative, was distractedly flipping through a magazine. "Good morning. I'm Emily Carter, the nurse in charge of today's shift. How was Mrs. Vance's night?" The companion looked up, assessing her from head to toe. "The night was restless. My mother-in-law had episodes of mental confusion. The doctor says it's normal due to the trauma, but we're worried." Emily nodded, checking the file and the monitors. "I'll check her vital signs and medications. Dr. Smith should be by soon for the full evaluation." As she performed the procedures, Emily felt an inexplicable discomfort. There was something familiar about this patient, in the aristocratic features of her face, in the way she seemed to possess a natural authority, even unconscious. "Are you her daughter?" she asked casually, as she adjusted the IV drip. "No, I'm her son, Daniel Vance's fiancé. He should be here shortly. He had an emergency meeting at the company. You know, construction companies don't stop, even with family problems." The world stopped. The stethoscope almost slipped from Emily's hands. Daniel Vance. There, about to walk through the same door after 7 years, the father of her daughters, the man who had abandoned her without explanation when she needed him most. "Is there a problem?" the woman asked, noticing her sudden paleness. "No, just a drop in pressure. It happens when we're at the end of the shift," she feigned, trying to control her breathing. "I'll order the pending tests. Excuse me." Emily left the room, her heart pounding in her chest. She leaned against the hallway wall, breathing deeply. It couldn't be. Not today, when the girls were at the hospital. She needed to get them out of there immediately. Almost running, she headed to the lounge, where she found Anna and Lily, playing with their toy medical kits, carefully organizing surgery on a teddy bear. "Girls, we're going to have to leave early today." "But Mommy, we haven't even operated on Mr. Paws yet," protested Lily, the more determined of the two. "We can come back tomorrow with the kit," Emily promised, hastily gathering her daughter's belongings. "Did something bad happen?" asked Anna, always the more perceptive. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Her daughter's innocent observation almost made her laugh nervously. A ghost. That's exactly what Daniel had become to her, a presence that haunted her thoughts on the loneliest nights, on the girls' birthdays, when she looked at their faces and saw his features. "No, my love. Mommy just remembered we need to stop by the market before going home." As she put the toys in the backpack, Emily tried to organize her thoughts. She needed to notify coordination, ask to be replaced in this specific case. She'd invent any excuse. The sound of voices in the hallway made her freeze. One of them, deep and distinctive, hit her like lightning, unearthing memories she thought were buried. There was no time. She took the girl's hands and opened the lounge door, intending to go in the opposite direction. Too late. At the end of the hallway, walking towards her with firm, determined steps, was Daniel Vance. More mature, his face slightly marked by time, but unmistakable. The same proud bearing, the same penetrating gaze, now framed by discreet lines of expression. He wore an impeccably tailored suit, a luxury watch on his wrist, the perfect image of the successful businessman. Their gazes met. First, confusion. Then, recognition. And then, absolute shock when he lowered his eyes and saw the two girls holding Emily's hands. Two girls with his same eyes, his same face shape. Time seemed to freeze in that aseptic hallway. "Good morning, sir," Anna greeted, breaking the silence with her natural friendliness. "Are you visiting someone sick?" Daniel opened his mouth, but no sound came out. His eyes went from Emily to the girls, from the girls to Emily, in a cycle of painful comprehension. "Anna, Lily, let's go." Emily gently pulled her daughters, avoiding Daniel's gaze. "Emily," his voice came out hoarse, almost a whisper. She kept walking, determined to get out of there as quickly as possible. "Emily," he called louder this time, taking steps in her direction. "Not now," she replied without looking back, quickening her pace with the girls. "Do you know him, Mommy?" Lily asked curiously. "He's an old acquaintance," she replied, feeling her heart clench. She managed to reach the elevator and quickly got in, breathing a sigh of relief as the doors closed before Daniel could reach them. The girls looked at her confused, sensing something was wrong. "Mommy, why was that handsome man looking at us like that?" asked Anna, always observant. "He must have mistaken us for someone else," Emily replied, trying to keep her voice steady. Upon reaching the ground floor, Emily took the girls to the hospital cafeteria. She needed time to think, to calm her wildly beating heart. She ordered juices for her daughters and a strong coffee for herself. "Mommy, are we leaving without you finishing work?" Lily asked, playing with her straw. "No, my love. Mommy needs to finish her shift. We'll just wait here for a bit, and then go back to the lounge with Aunt Patty." Her cell phone vibrated in her scrub pocket. A message from an unidentified number. "We need to talk. Please. I'm in the hospital chapel." Daniel. Emily closed her eyes for an instant. How did he get her number? Probably through the hospital system. As the owner of an influential construction company, it wouldn't be difficult. "Girls, would you be okay with Aunt Patty for half an hour? Mommy needs to sort something important out." The twins were entertained with the drawings they were making on napkins. Emily left her daughters with her friend and headed to the chapel, a small, quiet space in the hospital basement. Opening the door, she saw Daniel sitting in the last pew, head bowed, hands clasped, in a posture she would never imagine seeing in this man, who was always so self-assured. He looked up when he heard her footsteps. His eyes were red, moist. Another shock for Emily, who had never seen him cry. "How long?" was his first question. His voice choked. 7 years, she replied dryly. 7 years, he repeated, as if trying to process the magnitude of lost time. "Why didn't you tell me?" Indignation rose in Emily's throat like acid. "Tell you? You? Who disappeared without a trace? Who cheated on me? For another woman, without even having the decency to break up with me personally?" Daniel frowned, clearly confused. "What are you talking about? I never cheated on you. You're the one who disappeared, who wouldn't answer my calls, who blocked all contacts." Emily felt her blood run cold. "Don't invent stories now, Daniel. I saw the photos. I received the messages." "What photos? What messages?" He stood up, running a hand through his hair in evident frustration. "Emily, I came back from my trip and you were gone. No one at your job knew about you. Your cell phone wouldn't connect." The air between them grew thick with unanswered questions, with the shadow of a manipulation beginning to reveal itself. "I was pregnant, Daniel, with twins. Your daughters." Emily let the words fall like stones, heavy and sharp. He staggered as if he'd received a physical blow, leaning on the chapel pew to keep from falling. "My God, I have daughters," he murmured, more to himself than to her. "Those girls, they're my daughters." "Yes, Anna and Lily. They were born on August 10th, 8 months after you vanished from my life." Daniel covered his face with his hands. When he lowered them, there was a renewed determination in his gaze. "Something is very wrong with this story, Emily. I never, ever would have abandoned you, much less pregnant. Someone interfered. Someone lied to both of us." Emily crossed her arms defensively. And who would be interested in that? The silence that followed was revealing. Daniel's eyes involuntarily went upward, in the direction of the room where his mother was hospitalized. "No!" Emily shook her head. "She wouldn't do that." "My mother never approved of our relationship. She called you, said I deserved someone from our circle." "The little nurse," Emily completed, remembering the few unpleasant interactions with Mrs. Vance. But from that to separating a couple, hiding a pregnancy. "You know my mother. You know what she's capable of when it comes to protecting the family, as she says." Emily sat down, feeling her legs weak. Flashes of memory returned. The strange messages, the unanswered calls, the photos she had received from an unknown number, showing Daniel embracing another woman. "If what you say is true, we lost 7 years. You lost the birth of your daughters, their first steps, their first words." Daniel sat beside her, maintaining a respectful distance. "I need to meet them, Emily. I need to be their father. They don't even know you exist. When they ask about their father, I say he lives very far away. And now I'm here," he whispered. "Please, don't keep me from them." Emily felt the weight of a decision that would change 4 lives forever. The girls deserved to know their father, but how to introduce this stranger into their lives? How to explain all this? I don't know, Daniel. I need to think. The girls are my priority. They are my priority too, from now on, he affirmed, with a conviction that surprised her. I'm going to confront my mother as soon as she's lucid. I need to know what really happened. Emily's pager buzzed, calling her back to reality. I have to go back to work and decide how to handle this. Can I at least see them again, without saying who I am yet? Just get to know them a little? There was so much pain and longing in his request that Emily couldn't refuse. They're in the lounge on the 5th floor, but no revealing who you are. They're sensitive, perceptive. Like their mother, he commented, with a slight smile that almost melted the ice she had built around her heart. Emily left the chapel with her head spinning. Everything she had believed for 7 years could be a carefully orchestrated lie. All the resentment, all the anger towards Daniel could have been directed at the wrong person. Upon returning to the ICU floor, she found Patty rushing out of room 704. Emily, your patient had an improvement in consciousness. She's asking to speak with her son urgently. At that moment, Emily saw Daniel approaching the nursing station at the same time her daughters came out of the lounge, accompanied by another nurse. The girls ran towards her, animated, to show her the drawings they had made. It was like witnessing an inevitable collision in slow motion. Daniel stopped a few feet away, watching his daughters with such raw emotion on his face that it broke her heart. The girls, sensing his gaze, turned curiously. It's the man from before, Mommy, Anna pointed out. He looks sad. Lily, always the bolder, stepped forward. Do you want to see our drawing? We made a hospital with lots of doctors and patients. Daniel knelt to be at their height. His voice choked when he replied, I'd love to see them. Emily watched the scene, torn between fear and the inevitability of the moment. As the girls proudly showed their drawings to Daniel, Patty approached her. Who is he? The girls seemed to like him. Their father, Emily replied in a whisper. He just found out he's a father. Patty's eyes widened. Holy cow, is that him? Daniel? Emily nodded, unable to tear her gaze from the scene in front of her. Daniel examining the children's drawings with genuine admiration, answering his daughter's questions, his face lit up by a joy she had never seen in him. Do you want to be doctors? He asked the girls, smiling. Nurses like Mommy, Lily replied with conviction. Or astronauts, Anna added thoughtfully. We haven't decided yet. Daniel laughed, a sound Emily hadn't heard in so long it almost made her cry. The girls laughed too, as if sharing some secret joke with this stranger, who unknowingly carried the same blood. At that moment, from room 704, came the sound of the emergency bell. Emily and Patty immediately ran, followed by another nurse. Daniel stayed behind with the girls, who watched the sudden movement apprehensively. Inside the room, Mrs. Vance was agitated, trying to pull the catheter from her arm. My son, she stammered. I need to tell. Mrs. Vance, please calm down, Emily pleaded, gently holding her arms. Your son is here at the hospital. I'll call him. Eleanor's eyes met Emily's, and something in them changed. A recognition, followed by astonishment. You, the lady murmured. The nurse, his. Emily felt a chill run down her spine. I'll call your son now. Leaving the room, she saw Daniel still talking to the girls, now showing them photos on his cell phone, probably of some construction project, judging by the enthusiasm with which he explained. Daniel, Emily called. Your mother is conscious and wants to talk to you, urgently. He stood up, looking at his daughters with evident reluctance to leave them. We'll save the drawings for you to see later, Anna promised, with surprising intuition for a 7-year-old. Thank you, little one, he replied, lightly touching his daughter's hair, a gesture so natural and yet so significant that Emily's eyes burned. When Daniel entered his mother's room, Emily took the girls away, but not before seeing Mrs. LM's Eleanor Vance's expression, a mixture of fear and recognition. The past was about to be unearthed, and nothing would be the same. As she helped her daughters put away their drawing materials, Emily tried to process everything that had happened that morning. The unexpected reunion, the revelations, the possibility that her entire history with Daniel had been based on a lie. "Mommy, that man has eyes just like ours," Lily commented thoughtfully. Emily froze, surprised by the observation. "Do you think so?" she asked, trying to sound casual. "Yes, green with blue, just like us. And the smile, too," the little one continued. "He's nice. He said he's going to build a hospital just for kids someday." Anna, quieter, stared at her mother, as if trying to decipher a riddle. "He knows us, doesn't he, Mommy?" she finally asked. Emily felt her heart clench. Her daughters were always too perceptive for their age. "Why do you think that, my love?" "Because he looked at us like you look, as if we were the most important thing in the world." A tear escaped Emily's eye before she could hold it back. She quickly wiped it away, but not fast enough to fool her daughters. "Mommy's crying?" Lily approached, touching her face with her delicate little hands. "Just a little, my love. Mommy's emotional because—" She hesitated, searching for the right words. "Because today is a special day." "Because of the man with eyes like ours?" Anna asked, astute as ever. Emily took a deep breath. "Yes, my love, because of him." The girls exchanged glances. That silent communication that only twins seemed to master before turning their attention back to their mother. "Is he our daddy?" Lily asked directly, with the frankness of children. The world stopped for Emily. How to answer that question? How to explain something so complex to 7-year-olds? Before she could formulate a response, the lounge door opened. Daniel stood there, his face pale, his hands trembling slightly. "Emily," he called, his voice almost unrecognizable. "My mother confessed everything." Daniel's devastated expression said it all. In the small lounge, the air seemed thick, laden with secrets about to be revealed. The twins looked curiously from Emily to the stranger at the door, their perceptive little eyes catching the palpable tension between the adults. "Girls," Emily took a deep breath, kneeling to be at her daughter's height. "Could you go with Aunt Patty to the cafeteria for some hot chocolate?" "But we just asked an important question," Lily protested, crossing her arms with determination. Anna, always more sensitive to her mother's emotional state, touched her sister's shoulder. "Come on, Lily. Mommy needs to talk to the man with eyes like ours." Emily exchanged a grateful look with her daughter. Patty, who was watching the scene from the doorway, understood the silent message and approached the girls. "Who wants hot chocolate with marshmallows?" she asked animatedly, extending her hands to the little ones. After the girls left, a heavy silence settled in the room. Daniel entered, closing the door behind him. He seemed to have aged years in a few minutes. His eyes, so similar to his daughter's, were red and moist. "She confessed everything," he repeated, his voice choked. "Everything, Emily." Emily gestured to a chair and sat opposite him, maintaining a safe distance. Her heart pounded so hard she could feel it in her throat. What exactly did she say? Daniel ran his hands over his face, as if trying to erase the conversation he had just had. "When she found out you were pregnant, she planned everything." He paused, swallowing. "She intercepted your messages on my phone while I was asleep. She hired a woman to pretend to be my lover and sent you manipulated photos." Emily felt her blood run cold. Memories of that dark period rushed back with full force. The photos showing Daniel embracing an unknown woman in a luxury restaurant. The cruel messages claiming he never wanted a serious commitment. that the relationship had just been a fleeting affair. "And the trip?" she asked, her voice almost a whisper. "You just disappeared." My mother invented a crisis at the company, a multi-million-dollar loss on an overseas project. She convinced me I needed to travel immediately to save the business. He shook his head, clearly disgusted with his own naivety. "It was all a lie. When I returned 3 weeks later, you were gone. Your phone wouldn't connect, your address. You had moved." "I blocked your number," Emily admitted. "And yes, I moved to a smaller, cheaper apartment. I needed to save for the babies who were coming." Daniel lowered his head. The weight of the revelation was evident on his slumped shoulders. "I looked for you, Emily, for months, at the hospital where you worked. They told me you had requested a transfer. No one knew your new address." "It was for safety," she explained, feeling a pang of guilt. "I thought you might show up, make a scene. I was pregnant, vulnerable, scared." "I never would have," he began, but stopped. "It doesn't matter now. The damage is done." Emily observed the man in front of her. Daniel had always been determined, confident, sometimes even arrogant. Traits that attracted and irritated her equally in the past. Now he seemed broken, the mask of the successful businessman completely shattered. "How is she?" Emily asked, referring to Mrs. Vance. "Devastated. The doctor had to lightly sedate her. Her blood pressure went up too high during our conversation." He paused. "She knew she was wrong. I think the imminence of death made her want to clear her conscience. And your fiancée, the woman who was in the room?" "Mariana," he replied dryly. "She went out to sort something out at the company. She doesn't know anything yet." An uncomfortable silence settled between them. So many unanswered questions, so many lost years, so many decisions to make. "What do we do now?" Daniel finally asked. Emily adjusted her badge on her scrub, an automatic gesture that helped her organize her thoughts. "I don't know, Daniel. We have 2 7-year-old girls who just asked if you're their father." His eyes widened. "They asked that? What did you say?" "Nothing yet. You came in before I could say anything." Daniel stood up, pacing restlessly around the small room. "I want to be their father, Emily. Truly. Not just on paper or with child support. I want to get to know them, take them out, be present at their birthdays, at their school performances. I want to make up for every lost second." There was so much sincerity in his voice that Emily felt the wall she had built around her heart begin to crack. "It's not that simple. The girls have a routine, a structured life. I can't just drop a bomb like that on them." "I know," he nodded, surprising her with his understanding. "We can do it gradually. First as a friend, then. And your life, Daniel? You're about to marry another woman. You have a huge company to manage. How do 2 little girls fit into all that?" The question hung in the air, heavy as lead. Daniel stopped pacing and looked Emily directly in the eyes. "My life changed the moment I saw those 2 girls in the hallway. Everything else, the company, the marriage, the commitments, took a back seat." Before Emily could answer, the door burst open. Mariana Smith, impeccable in her beige suit and high heels, looked at them with an expression of distrust. "Daniel, I've been looking for you for half an hour. What are you doing here with—" She looked Emily up and down. "The nurse?" The air in the small room suddenly became electric. Daniel straightened his posture. The vulnerability of moments before replaced by a firmness Emily hadn't seen since their youth. "Mariana, this is Emily Carter. We need to talk." The woman caught something in his tone. Her eyes narrowed with suspicion. "About what?" "Not here," he replied, giving Emily a meaningful look. "Let's go to the cafeteria." Before leaving, Daniel turned to Emily. "We can continue this conversation later. I need to sort this out first." She nodded, feeling the weight of the decision she would have to make. When the door closed, Emily allowed herself a moment of weakness, letting the tears she had held back finally fall. 7 years of anger directed at the wrong person. 7 years depriving her daughters of their father. 7 years convincing herself she was better off alone. Her pager buzzed, calling her back to reality. She needed to go back to work, to the aseptic, organized world where she knew exactly what to do, where there were no resurfaced ex-boyfriends, manipulative mothers-in-law, or suspicious fiancés. Only patients needing care. That she knew how to do well. In the hospital cafeteria, Daniel watched Mariana nervously stir the coffee she had ordered. He had told her everything. The story with Emily 7 years ago, his mother's manipulation, the daughters he had just discovered. Twins, Mariana repeated with a humorless laugh. Your mother really knew how to complicate things. It's not about my mother now, Daniel replied seriously. It's about Anna and Lily, my daughters. Mariana studied his face for a long moment. And what do you plan to do? Pay child support? Fortnightly visits? Or are you thinking of throwing away 5 years of relationship with me for a mistake from the past? The calculated coldness in her words hit him like a slap. Mistake from the past? We're talking about 2 girls, Mariana, my daughters. Daughters you didn't even know existed 2 hours ago, she retorted. Daughters of a nurse. The contempt in the last word was palpable. What will your partners and investors think? Daniel Vance, the great businessman, trading his traditional family fiancée for a single mother from the NHS. Something inside him broke. It was as if a veil had been lifted from his eyes, allowing him to clearly see the woman in front of him for the first time. You're just like my mother, he stated, with a calm that surprised himself. The same values, the same prejudices, the same inability to see beyond appearances. Mariana paled. Don't compare me to your mother. I'm just being realistic. No, you're being cruel and prejudiced, and I was an idiot for not realizing it sooner. Daniel took out his wallet, leaving some bills on the table. The wedding is off, Mariana. You can inform your family and the guests. You can't be serious. She raised her voice, attracting curious glances from neighboring tables. You're going to throw everything away for those bastards. Daniel felt his blood boil. He leaned across the table, his voice low and dangerously controlled. If you ever refer to my daughters that way again, you will bitterly regret it. I have enough lawyers to ensure you never get a decent job in this city again. He stood up, adjusting his jacket with a dignity he didn't truly feel. Inside, he was shattered, but he wouldn't give her the satisfaction of noticing. I'll send someone to pick up my things from the apartment. As he left the cafeteria, he felt a confused mix of emotions. Sadness for the end of a 5-year relationship, relief at finally seeing who Mariana really was, and overwhelming anxiety about the future with the daughters he barely knew. Emily was checking Mrs. Vance's vital signs when she felt a presence at the door. She turned to find Daniel, looking exhausted but determined. How is she? He asked softly, approaching. Stable. The sedation is taking effect. She should sleep for a few hours. Daniel watched his sleeping mother, her aged face now serene against the white pillow. I broke up with Mariana, he said abruptly. Emily stopped what she was doing, surprised. Daniel, didn't you need to? Yes, I needed to. She called our daughters bastards. Emily's blood ran cold. She what? Exactly. She showed who she really is. He ran a hand through his hair in a nervous gesture. I realized I was going to marry someone who despised people like you, like my daughters. Like me? Emily raised an eyebrow. Working people, people who build their lives with their own effort, he quickly explained. Real people, not those social event puppets. A thoughtful silence settled between them, as Emily finished adjusting Mrs. Vance's I-4. "The girls are waiting at reception," she finally said. "My shift is over. Can I get to know them better? An ice cream, maybe? Or is it too soon?" There was so much expectation on his face that Emily didn't have the heart to refuse. They'd love it. But Daniel, no revelations yet. We need to do it calmly. I promise. I'll just be Mommy's friend who wants to get to know them better. At reception, Anna and Lily were animatedly playing with the origamis Patty had taught them to make. Seeing their mother approach with Daniel, their little faces lit up. "Look, Mommy, we made lots of little birds," exclaimed Lily, proudly showing her creation. "They're beautiful, my love," Emily praised, taking one of the colorful origamis. "Girls, Mr. Daniel wants to invite us for ice cream. What do you think?" The twins exchanged animated glances. That silent communication that always fascinated the adults around them. "Can we choose any flavor?" Anna asked, always attentive to details. "Any," Daniel confirmed, smiling. "Even 2 flavors together?" Lily insisted, testing the limits. "Even 3, if you want," he replied, making the girls' eyes widen with delicious surprise. On the way to the ice cream shop near the hospital, Emily observed the interaction between Daniel and her daughters. He patiently answered every curious question. He showed genuine interest in children's topics and occasionally cast wondering glances at Emily, as if he couldn't believe his luck at being there. "Do you build big buildings?" Lily asked, naturally taking his hand, as if she had known him for years. "Yes, my company builds buildings, roads, and bridges," Daniel replied, visibly moved by the small gesture of trust. "Have you built a hospital yet?" Anna wanted to know, always interested in the world of health. "Not yet, but that's an excellent idea. Maybe we can design a hospital together someday." "We can help," exclaimed Lily. "I can draw super well." "I'm sure you can. I'd love to see your drawings." At the ice cream shop, the girls chose exotic combinations that made the adults smile. Chocolate with pistachio and strawberry for Lily, vanilla with mint and caramel for Anna. Daniel opted for a simple chocolate, while Emily chose lemon, her favorite flavor since forever, as he quietly recalled. "You remember?" she commented, surprised. "I remember everything about you," he replied, with an intensity that made her look away. The girls, entertained with their colorful ice creams, chatted animatedly about school, friends, the ballet teacher who demanded too much. Daniel drank in every word, every expression, every gesture, like a thirsty man finding an oasis. "Why do you have eyes just like ours?" Anna suddenly asked, with that disconcerting sincerity of children. Emily froze, her ice cream spoon halfway to her mouth. Daniel looked at her, silently asking for guidance. "Sometimes people who aren't from the same family can have similar features," Emily carefully explained. "Like a coincidence?" Lily asked, licking the dripping ice cream. "Exactly," Daniel confirmed, regaining his composure. "A very special coincidence." Anna didn't seem convinced. Her gaze went from one adult to another with that keen perception that always surprised Emily. "Have you known our mommy for a long time?" the little girl asked. "Yes," Daniel replied honestly. "We were very good friends when we were younger." "Before we were born?" Anna insisted. "Yes, before you were born." "And then you left?" Lily's question hit home, making Emily choke on her ice cream. Daniel took a deep breath before answering, choosing his words carefully. "Yes, I had to travel very far, and I lost contact with your mommy for a long time, but now I'm back." "Are you going to stay?" Anna asked, her eyes, so similar to her father's, fixed on him with an almost adult intensity. "If you and your mommy let me, yes, I would very much like to stay." The girls seemed satisfied with the answer, returning to focus on their rapidly melting ice creams. Emily and Daniel exchanged glances, a mixture of relief and apprehension. Comment your thoughts on this unexpected reunion. Do you think Emily and Daniel can truly rebuild their lives together? After ice cream, they walked to a small park nearby. The twins ran to the swings, leaving the adults sitting on a nearby bench watching them. "They're incredible," Daniel commented, his voice choked with emotion. "So intelligent, so perceptive. They've always been like that. Sometimes I forget they're only 7, how mature they can be. Anna is the most observant, right? And Lily is the most impulsive." Emily smiled, impressed. "You managed to grasp that in just a few hours with them." "They're my daughters," he simply replied. "I feel like I already know them, somehow." A comfortable silence settled between them as they watched the girls play. "When do we tell them?" Daniel finally asked. Emily sighed thoughtfully. "I need to prepare them. Maybe this weekend, after they've had more contact with you. They need to feel comfortable first." "And us, Emily?" The question caught her off guard. "Us? I know it's too soon. 7 years have passed. You must have moved on. Maybe there's someone in your life." "There's no one," she interrupted him. "There were a few dates over the years, but nothing serious. The girls have always been my priority." Daniel absorbed the information, an almost hopeful gleam emerging in his eyes. "Even so," Emily continued, "we can't just pick up where we left off. We're different people now." "I understand," he nodded, "but I'd like the chance to get to know the Emily of now, the respected nurse, the dedicated mother, if you'll allow me." Before she could answer, Lily came running, breathless with excitement. "Mommy, there's a magician doing tricks near the fountain. Can we see him? Please!" Daniel stood up, extending his hand to Emily. "Shall we go? You can't miss a magician in the park." She hesitated for a moment before accepting his outstretched hand, feeling a familiar shiver at his touch. It was like going back in time, and yet completely new. The magician was an old man, with white hair doing simple tricks, but they enchanted the children gathered around him. The twins watched, fascinated, as he transformed a handkerchief into a flower and then made it disappear. "How did he do that?" Anna whispered, open-mouthed. "It's magic," Lily replied, as if it were obvious. "There's no real magic," Anna retorted. "It's all a trick." "Sometimes," Daniel intervened, kneeling between them. "The most magical things in life aren't tricks, but special coincidences, like finding someone important you haven't seen in a long time." He looked up at Emily as he spoke, and something in the intensity of that gaze made her remember the past, the whispered promises, the shared dreams, the future they imagined together. Daniel's phone rang, breaking the moment. He answered quickly, his face turning serious. "I understand. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Hanging up, he looked at Emily with regret. "My mother woke up. She's agitated. The doctor asked me to come back." "Of course," she replied, understanding. "We have to go too. The girls have school early tomorrow." He turned to the twins, who were watching the magician do his final act. "I need to go now, but I hope to see you again very soon. Maybe we can visit the zoo this weekend." "Yes!" exclaimed Lily, jumping with excitement. Anna, more reserved, asked, "Do you promise you'll really come?" The seriousness in the question almost broke his heart. Daniel, how many promises had those girls heard from fleeting male figures? "I promise," he replied, with all the solemnity the question deserved. "I won't disappear again." They said goodbye at the park entrance. Daniel hesitated, clearly wanting to hug his daughters, but holding back so as not to rush things. He settled for formally squeezing their little hands, as an adult would with any child. "Until Saturday, then?" he asked Emily. "Until Saturday," she confirmed. "I'll text you the address." When Daniel walked away, Lily looked at her mother with that determined gaze Emily knew so well. "Is he going to be our friend now, Mommy?" "Yes, my love, if you want." "I want to," Lily affirmed, without hesitation. Anna remained silent, thoughtful. In the taxi ride home, she finally spoke. "He looks sad, Mommy. Sad and happy at the same time." Emily hugged her daughter, impressed by her sensitivity. Sometimes adults feel many things at the same time. "Like you now?" the little one asked, surprising her again. "Yes, like me now." The rest of the week passed in a blur. Daniel sent daily messages asking about the girls, sharing memories of the past, trying to rebuild the bridge between them. Emily responded cautiously, still afraid to open her heart completely, but increasingly convinced that their story deserved a second chance. Mrs. Vance remained hospitalized. Her condition fluctuated between stable and concerning. Emily had asked to be removed from the case, explaining the situation to coordination. Still, she occasionally passed by room 704 and observed the sleeping lady, trying to reconcile the current fragile image with the authoritarian woman who had destroyed so many lives with her manipulation. On Friday, the eve of the zoo trip, Emily was organizing files at the nursing station when Patty approached hurriedly. "Emily, Mrs. Vance is asking to speak with you. She's lucid and insistent." "With me? Are you sure?" "Absolutely. She said she needs to see you before it's too late." With a pounding heart, Emily headed to room 704. She found Mrs. Vance sitting in bed, looking much more fragile than she remembered, but with that same penetrating gaze that had always intimidated her in the past. "Mrs. Vance," she greeted formally, keeping a safe distance. "I heard you wanted to see me." The old woman studied her for a long moment before speaking, her voice weaker, but still with that characteristic authority. "You haven't changed much. You still have that determined look." Emily remained silent, waiting. "My son told me you reconnected, and that he met the girls. Yes, they're pretty. They look like him when he was a child." The comment surprised Emily. "You saw them?" "Daniel showed me photos he took at the park. He can't stop looking at them." Eleanor paused, adjusting uncomfortably in bed. "He broke off his engagement with Mariana." "Yes, he told me." 5 years of relationship thrown away," the old woman commented, more to herself than to Emily. Then she looked up again. "I should be furious, devastated, and I'm not." A tired smile emerged on her wrinkled face. "Curiously, no. When he showed me the girls' photos, I saw something in his eyes I never saw before, not even when he was with Mariana." Emily felt her throat tighten. "What do you want from me, Mrs. Vance?" The old woman took a deep breath, as if gathering strength. "I want to ask for forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it, that what I did is unforgivable. I separated a loving couple. I deprived my son of seeing his daughters grow up, all for pride, prejudice, and fear." Fear? Of losing him, of no longer being necessary in his life. Tears began to roll down her wrinkled face. "I was a fool, and now I'll probably die without knowing my granddaughters." The resentment Emily had harbored for years began to dissipate before this fragile, repentant woman. "The girls are curious about their grandmother," she finally said. "I told them you're sick, but we didn't go into details." Hope illuminated Eleanor's tired eyes. "You would allow them to visit me? We'll see how you progress in the next few days," Emily replied diplomatically. "If you're stronger, perhaps we can arrange a brief visit." It was more than Eleanor expected. She nodded, too emotional to speak. When Emily was about to leave, the old woman called her back. "Emily, he never stopped loving you. All these years, I never saw my son truly happy, not even with Mariana." A pause. "Don't make the same mistake I did. Don't let pride stop you from rebuilding your family. The words accompanied Emily the rest of the day, resonating in her mind as she picked up the girls from school, prepared dinner, helped with homework. That night, after the twins fell asleep, she sat on the balcony of the small apartment, watching the city lights. Her cell phone vibrated with a message from Daniel. "Still awake? Can I call?" Instead of replying, she called him herself. His voice answered on the first ring. "Hello," he said, sounding surprised and happy. "Your mother called me to talk today. She was direct. I know. She told me. What did you think?" "Honestly, I never thought I'd see her like that. Vulnerable. Human. The proximity of death changes people, I think," he commented. "The doctor says her condition is serious. The trauma revealed other health problems she was hiding." "I'm so sorry, Daniel." "Thanks." A pause. "Emily, about tomorrow." "Yes, I'm nervous. It's ridiculous, I know. I'm a 34-year-old man who runs a company with hundreds of employees, but I'm terrified of spending a day at the zoo with my daughters." She smiled, touched by his sincerity. "They're excited too. They haven't stopped talking about it all day." "And you?" The question came loaded with implicit meanings. "Are you excited too?" Emily hesitated, contemplating the London night sky. "Confused would be the more precise word," she finally admitted. "A week ago, he was just a painful memory. Now, I don't know what to think or feel. It's too much to process, Daniel. 7 years of anger directed at the wrong person. 7 years raising our daughters alone, believing you had abandoned us." "I know." His voice sounded sorrowful. "If I could go back in time. But we can't. We can only move forward." The silence that followed was charged with unspoken emotions, with unanswered questions. "How do we tell them?" Daniel finally asked. "I was thinking of something simple, direct. Children appreciate honesty." Emily took a deep breath. "Maybe after the outing, if everything goes well." "Do you think they'll accept me?" The vulnerability in his voice moved her. Daniel Vance, the powerful businessman, reduced to an insecure father, fearing rejection from his own daughters. "They already like you," she replied sincerely. "Anna asked 3 times if you'd really come tomorrow." A sound that could be a sigh of relief or a choked laugh came from the other end of the line. "Sleep well, Emily. See you tomorrow." "See you tomorrow, Daniel." Hanging up, Emily realized that, for the first time in years, she didn't feel that pang of pain when she heard his name. Maybe it was a beginning. Subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming stories. Like this video and comment your thoughts below. Saturday dawned with an impossibly blue sky, as if London had decided to cooperate with the big day. The twins woke up animated, discussing which animals they wanted to see first, while Emily prepared a hearty breakfast. "Is Daniel coming yet?" Lily asked for the 3rd time, her mouth full. "He said he'd be here at 10, my love. Still an hour to go," Emily replied patiently, adjusting the ribbon in Anna's hair. "And are we going to tell him the secret?" the little one continued. Emily frowned. "What secret?" The twins exchanged conspiratorial glances. "That we think he's our daddy," Anna revealed in a low voice, as if sharing a precious treasure. The glass Emily was holding almost slipped from her hands. "What? How? Why do you think that?" Lily rolled her eyes, with that expression of someone who thinks adults are lamentably slow. "It's obvious, Mommy. He has eyes just like ours. He smiles just like us. And he looks at you like in the old photos." "What? Old photos?" Emily asked, increasingly bewildered. "The ones you keep in the blue box in the closet," Anna explained. "We saw them once when we were looking for the school album." Emily sat down, feeling her legs weak. The blue box. The only place she had kept memories of Daniel, which she hadn't had the courage to throw away. Some photos, movie tickets, a letter. "You weren't upset?" she finally managed to ask. The girls seemed genuinely confused by the question. "Why?" Lily questioned. "Because I didn't tell you the truth before. Because I said your father lived far away." Anna shrugged. "He did live far away, and now he's back." The simplicity of children's logic completely disarmed her. For the twins, there were no complex lies or betrayals, just the simple truth that their father had been far away, and now he had returned. "So, we can tell him we already know," Lily insisted, impatient. Emily took a deep breath, regaining her composure. "We'll do this. First, we'll have a fun day at the zoo, get to know Daniel better. Then, we'll all sit down together to talk. Okay?" "Okay," they replied in unison, returning to focus on breakfast. Emily watched her daughters, marveling at their resilience, their ability to accept life's twists with a serenity that many adults would envy. Perhaps she had underestimated the little ones, protecting them from a truth they had already intuited on their own. At 10 o'clock sharp, the doorbell rang. Daniel was there, holding a large bouquet of wildflowers for Emily and 2 colorful packages for the girls. "Good morning," he greeted, visibly nervous, but determined not to show it. The twins ran to greet him, their little faces lit up with anticipation. "Is it for us?" Lily asked, staring at the packages. "If you want," he replied, handing one to each. Inside were complete toy veterinarian kits, with functional stethoscopes, thermometers, needleless syringes, and even personalized white coats with their names. "Wow!" exclaimed Anna, normally the more reserved. "Now we can take care of real animals." "Those are pretend," Daniel clarified, smiling. "But who knows if someday you'll become real veterinarians." "I want to be a nurse like Mommy," Lily affirmed with conviction. "And I want to be an astronaut veterinarian," Anna added, making the adults laugh. Emily observed the interaction, perceiving the care Daniel had put into choosing the gifts, appropriate for their ages, aligned with their interests, neither excessively luxurious nor trivial. "Thank you for the flowers," she said, when the girls ran off to put away their new treasures. "They're my favorites." "I remember," he simply replied. The zoo trip was better than any of them could have expected. The twins were in their element, running from cage to cage, absorbing every piece of information about the animals, asking endless questions that Daniel answered with surprising patience. "Why does the giraffe have such a long neck?" Lily asked, fascinated by the animal. "To reach the leaves at the top of the trees," Daniel replied. "It's an evolutionary adaptation." "What's evolutionary adaptation?" she questioned, stumbling over the difficult word. "Evolutionary," he gently corrected. "It means that over many, many years, giraffes that had slightly longer necks got more food and survived better." "How do we adapt?" Anna asked, always looking for deeper connections. Daniel seemed surprised by the question, looking at Emily for guidance. "We humans adapt in many ways," she replied, joining the conversation. "Our greatest adaptation is our brain, which allows us to learn and solve problems. And we also adapt when our family changes," Anna added, with a wisdom that made both adults look at each other. During lunch at the zoo restaurant, Lily spilled juice on her shirt. Before Emily could react, Daniel was already standing, wiping the stain with napkins, calming the girl who threatened to cry. "No problem. It happens to everyone," he said, taking off his own jacket and putting it over her shoulders. "Look, now you have a superhero cape." Lily laughed, wiping her tears, instantly transformed from an embarrassed child into a powerful superhero. "You're good with them," Emily commented. while the girls were distracted with their ice cream for dessert. "It's natural," he replied, seemingly surprised with himself, as if he had always known how to do it. He just hadn't had the opportunity. At the end of the afternoon, when the children were already showing signs of tiredness, Daniel suggested a last ride on the little train that ran through the zoo. From above, they could see the entire park bathed in the golden light of the sunset. "It was the best day," Lily declared, yawning as she snuggled into the seat next to Daniel. Anna, sitting with Emily, thoughtfully watched her father and sister. "Can we do it again next week?" "If your mommy allows it," Daniel replied, looking hopefully at Emily. "We'll see," she smiled. "First, we need to have that conversation, remember?" The twins immediately straightened up, exchanging significant glances. Back at Emily's apartment, the girls ran to bathe and put on their pajamas, while the adults prepared a light snack in the kitchen. The domesticity of the scene was both strange and familiar, as if they were rehearsing a routine that could have been theirs all these years. "They already know," Emily revealed softly as she cut fruit. Daniel froze mid-motion of taking plates from the cupboard. "How so?" "They figured it out on their own, by the eyes, by the smile, and by old photos they found." "Photos? You kept our photos?" The surprise and hope in his voice were palpable. "Some," she admitted. "I couldn't get rid of everything." Before he could answer, the twins returned to the kitchen with wet hair and matching pajamas. Anna in light blue, Lily in soft pink. "Can we talk now?" Lily asked, always direct. The adults exchanged nervous glances before nodding. They took the snacks to the small living room, sitting together on the soft rug in front of the sofa, a habit from their family movie nights. "Girls," Emily began, carefully choosing her words. "Remember you always asked about your daddy, and I said he lived very far away." They nodded, their eyes fixed on her. "The truth is, I believed he had left by choice. I believed he no longer wanted to be with us, but I recently found out I was wrong." "Grandma Eleanor did something bad," Anna intervened, surprising the adults. "Right?" Daniel swallowed before answering. "Yes, my love. My mother, your grandmother, did something that separated your mom and me before I even knew you existed." "Why?" Lily asked, frowning. "Because sometimes adults do wrong things, believing they are protecting those they love," Daniel explained. "She believed your mom wasn't the right person for me. She was very, very wrong." A thoughtful silence settled as the girls processed the information. "So, you are our daddy," Anna concluded, not as a question, but as a statement. "Yes," Daniel confirmed, his voice choked. "I am your father, and I am so sorry for not having been here all these years." "But now you're going to stay?" Lily insisted, the same question she had asked days ago, now loaded with new meaning. "If you accept me, yes, I very much want to be your father, to know everything about you, to be present in every important moment." Anna, always the most cautious, studied him for a long moment. "Do you promise you won't leave again?" The question, so simple and yet so profound, made Daniel's eyes well up. "I promise with all the strength of my heart, I will never leave you again." To everyone's surprise, it was Anna who got up first, walking slowly towards Daniel. She stopped in front of him, her little eyes, so similar to his, serious and contemplative. "Can I call you Daddy?" Daniel couldn't hold back the tears that finally rolled down his face. "It would be the greatest honor of my life." The girl nodded solemnly before throwing herself into his arms. Lily, not wanting to be left behind, joined the hug, wrapping her arms tightly around his neck. "Daddy!" she exclaimed, savoring the new word. "Our daddy." Emily watched the scene, feeling her own tears roll freely. It was as if a circle had finally closed, as if an old wound was beginning to heal. "Mommy, come!" Anna called, extending her little hand. Excited, Emily approached, being pulled into the collective embrace. For a perfect moment, the four remained like that, intertwined. Finally complete. The following weeks were full of adjustments and discoveries. Daniel began to visit the small apartment daily, getting to know his daughter's routine, learning to help with homework, to tell bedtime stories, to deal with small tantrums and big existential questions. Mrs. Vance, still hospitalized, finally received a visit from her granddaughters. The encounter was surrounded by anticipation and tension, but the girls, with their innate ability to forgive, won over their grandmother in minutes. Anna, especially, seemed fascinated by the stories the old woman told about her father when he was a child. He also wanted to build things since he was little, Eleanor recounted, showing old photos Daniel had brought from his apartment. He used to build huge towers of blocks and would get furious when they fell down. "Just like me!" exclaimed Lily, excited by the similarity. Observing the interaction, Emily perceived Eleanor's transformation from the bitter, manipulative woman to a grandmother, desperate to make up for lost time. The illness, curiously, had been the catalyst for her humanization. After a month of daily visits, Daniel finally mustered the courage for the conversation he had been postponing with Emily. It was late at night. The girls were already asleep in their rooms. They were on the apartment balcony, sharing a bottle of wine, a luxury she rarely allowed herself before. "We need to talk about the future," he began, swirling the glass between his fingers. "We're fine as we are, don't you think?" she replied slightly defensively. "We are, but I feel like I'm always visiting. I always leave when they fall asleep." Emily knew where this conversation would lead. "What are you suggesting?" "I want us to live together, as a real family." She took a sip of wine, buying time. "It's too soon, Daniel. We just reconnected." "But we already lost 7 years." He placed his glass on the table, leaning closer. "I don't want to lose another day. The girls need stability. What if it doesn't work out between us? Have you thought about the emotional confusion for them? And what if it does work out? What if we lose the chance to be happy, all 4 of us together, out of fear?" The question hung between them, challenging. "I'm not talking about getting married tomorrow," he continued. "Just about living under the same roof, getting to know each other for real, in our daily lives. Building something together." Emily closed her eyes, letting the night breeze cool her face. She was tempted, very tempted. The last few weeks had shown a different Daniel than she remembered, more mature, more patient, more present, and the girls flourished with their father's presence, becoming more confident, happier. "Where would we live?" she finally asked, opening a small crack. His face lit up with hope. "Wherever you prefer. I can move here if you want to maintain the routine, or we can find a new place. That's ours. Or I have a house in the Surrey Hills, space, nature, excellent schools nearby, but I understand if it seems too far." Emily imagined her daughters growing up with space to run, trees to climb, away from the pollution and noise of the city. It was a dream she never imagined she could achieve as a single mother. "We could visit it," she suggested cautiously, "see if the girls like it." Daniel's smile lit up the night. "We can go tomorrow. It's Saturday. They don't have school. You had it all planned, didn't you?" "Hopeful," he corrected. "Just hopeful." The next day, the twins' excitement was contagious. The idea of visiting Daddy's house in the middle of the forest, as Lily had dramatically described it, left them talking non-stop throughout the journey. The property was impressive without being ostentatious, A contemporary house with clean lines, large windows, and a harmonious integration with the surrounding nature. A small artificial lake, a well-kept garden, and, to the girls' delight, a partially built treehouse. It was a project I started when I bought the land, Daniel explained, watching his daughters enthusiastically explore the structure. I never finished it. Maybe we could complete it together. Can we live in the treehouse? Lily asked, already imagining adventures. In the big house, my love, Emily laughed. The treehouse is for playing. Are there rooms for us? Anna wanted to know, always practical. Come see, Daniel invited, leading them inside the main house. The interior was spacious and welcoming, with a minimalist decor that surprised Emily. She expected something more ostentatious. Here could be your rooms, he showed, opening doors to two adjacent, large and bright but practically empty rooms. We can decorate them however you want. Can I have stars on the ceiling? Anna asked, looking up. And I a pink wall? Lily added. Anything you want, he promised, beaming. Emily watched, amazed at Daniel's transformation. He, who had always been so focused on business, on material conquests, now seemed to find his greatest joy in his daughter's small desires. At the end of the day, while the girls explored the garden under the supervision of the housekeeper, Daniel took Emily to the last room in the house, an office converted into something completely different. I was saving this for last, he said, opening the door. Emily entered and froze. The room had been transformed into a workspace and study area, with a large desk, bookshelves, and, most surprisingly, a bulletin board filled with information about specialized nursing courses. What is this? You always wanted to specialize in neonatal intensive care, he explained. I researched the best programs in the region. This space would be yours, for studying, working from home, whenever you wanted. She ran her fingers over the brochures, over the carefully selected books. You remembered. Everything, Emily. Every dream you shared with me, he approached cautiously. I don't want you to give up your career for us. I want you to expand it. To grow, I can help with the girl. We can make it work. Tears came without warning, overflowing before she could hold them back. They weren't tears of sadness, but of recognition, of being truly seen, understood, valued. This is high-level emotional manipulation, you know, she joked between sobs. He smiled, delicately wiping a tear with his thumb. It's love, Emily, just love. She looked at him, really looked at him, beyond the appearance, beyond the past, beyond the resentments. She saw the boy she had fallen in love with, the man she had lost, the father her daughters deserved, and something more, something new, and at the same time familiar. A partner, a travel companion. We're going to need time to organize the move, she finally said, surrendering to the inevitable. And I need to check the schools in the area. His expression changed from surprise to pure joy. Is that a yes? It's a let's try, she corrected, keeping her feet on the ground. One day at a time, no pressure. No pressure, he solemnly nodded, though his smile betrayed him. One day at a time. When they told the girls they would be moving to the house in the forest, the reaction was exactly what they expected. Shouts of joy, jumps of excitement, immediate plans for decorating their rooms. We're going to be a real family, exclaimed Lily, hugging her father's legs. We already are, Anna corrected, always the philosopher. Now, we're just going to live together. Emily and Daniel exchanged glances over their daughters' heads, a silent recognition of the wisdom contained in those simple words. The family didn't begin with the move, or even with the reunion at the hospital. It had always been there, interrupted, but never truly broken. Just waiting for the moment to reunite again. Back at the apartment, with the girls asleep in the back seat of the car, Daniel held Emily's hand over the gear shift. "Thank you," he simply said. "For what?" "For not letting bitterness win, for giving us a second chance, for raising our daughters to be so wonderful." She squeezed his hand in response. Words were unnecessary. The road ahead wouldn't be perfect. There was much to rebuild, to learn, to verwerf. But now they had time, and for the first time in 7 years, the certainty that they were exactly where they were meant to be.